You see, I have a microphone and I can't do as well as you do. Hello there. Thank you so much for coming on this marvellous day. Welcome to the Radisson York. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Doug. For those of you who do know me, my name is still Doug. Doug, thank you. I'm just here in order to help on the technical front and deal with a couple of housekeeping issues. Obviously, hopefully you've got your programme of events here. If not, there are some outside on the table, should you so desire at any point during the day. When lunch happens around about the 12:45 mark, Nigel, the wonderful Nigel, will open up the doors just over to my right, most of yours left, in order to take us through for where the lunch is being held. And also, if there are Q&As or things where people are asked to speak from the floor, if you can wait for myself or the marvellous Chris over here to bring the microphone to you, because otherwise it won't relate on the Zoom, so that Lynne won't be able to hear it, and we won't be able to catch it on the recording either. Just to let you know, this is all being recorded, but only for internal purposes, to be shared only amongst the network if necessary, but also so that I can put a summary down for a summary document and so forth. I probably will be coming round at lunchtime in order to just interview and take a couple of snapshots of you for comms and social media purposes, and also to ask your feeling on the Gypsy Roma Traveller History Month question of what does family mean to you. I won't take up too much of your time, I promise. And with all that done, allow me to introduce then, to give a proper welcome, Violet.
Thank you. For people that don't know me, they try to call me V or Violet. People that do know me call me Violet. I'm not V, I'm not Vi, I'm Violet. I'm probably not going to take 10 minutes, but I just wanted to take the time to thank you all for coming today and just say how appreciative I am at how collaboratively we're working. And I just wanted to share with you something that I learned about recently. And it's the work of Philip Aldridge. And Philip Aldridge was looking at the NHS and third sector organisations, and what he realised was there was something called the noble purpose paradox. And as I was reading about this man's work, it really put into context some of the disagreements that I've had with other Gypsy Traveller advocates over the many years that I've been doing this. And the noble purpose paradox manifests itself in that you have a sense that the cause is bigger than you. So therefore you fight for your cause way harder than somebody that's kind of wishy-washy. That you have such a personal sense of right in your cause that you find it hard to move and adjust, even a little bit. And I think each and every one of us in this room has our noble cause. We all have our fight. And it could, in the words of Philip Aldridge, have gone very, very wrong. Because we could have been so concentrated in our own little corner of the world and our own little corner of advocacy that we would have ended up at each other's throats. And it is testament to the people in this room that saw the Gypsies and Travellers as bigger than our personal feelings. That the Gypsies and Travellers living on the side of the road are more important than our own personal little fight for our corner of York, for our Welsh Gypsies, for our Scottish Gypsies, it's bigger than that. And I just want to just thank you all for that, for taking that on board and recognising that. And just to quote Philip Aldridge, the defining thing that I remember from the report was a statement. Why is it that the more compelling the mission, the more tricky it can be to get the best collaborative behaviours and the necessary focused action? It's acknowledged in national research that this is difficult. It's acknowledged that this was difficult in the NHS and generally in the third sector. And we've come together and we've managed to get it to, is it year 3 or 4? 4? Year 4? 5? And we're still here. We're still fighting the corner of our nomads. We're still fighting the corner of the cause. And I just want to thank you all for that. And I just want you to take on board how big that is. Because I have been involved in so many collaborations in the past that have fell to pieces because people feel they need to claim their corner. Well done. You're all amazing. So just to make you aware, we have a couple of small humans at the back. I may own one of them. I will try and keep her voice down, but she's noisy, she belongs to me, she's got attitude, what can I say? If she's getting on your nerves too much, give me a shout and I'll try and stuff a banana in her mouth or something, I don't know. And just to also make you aware that we have the lovely Anna and Christine from Consultancy Made Easy. So they're going to be evaluating MfC and the event today. So they might be just coming round and asking your opinion, because we're very keen to get the opinions of the people on the room, in the room captured. So yeah, that's it from me. And if I could hand over to Lynne. Is Lynne online? And remember, if you have a question, wait for the microphone. Nobody will hear you.
Am I online?
Yes, you are.
Right, thank you. Hi folks, I'm really sorry that I couldn't make it down today. A bit health-wise, there you go, these things happen. I'll definitely be with you next year and obviously be meeting you all before then as well. Hi, I can see all your bonny faces now. Hi, greetings from a sunny Montrose. I'm not going to take the whole amount of time either, because I think what's more important is the people that are going to be sharing their projects. And, you know, just jumping back to what Violet had said there about it being we're all part of a bigger picture, and we all need to, you know, to bring about change, we need to recognise that and all come together and put our own kind of missions, if you like, and what drives us aside for the greater good. So well said, Violet. I'm going to start just by saying a wee bit about where I am within Moving for Change now, because I've kind of shifted. I'm still responsible for commissioning and the network, but on the 1st of December last year, I took over the programme management, and it's 2 days a week as opposed to what was a full-time post with additional support. So I've spent the first few months streamlining a lot of the reporting process and application processes. That was based on, you know, saving on cost of administration from one point, and as much as less administration costs means more goes into grassroots and work out in the field, but also around, you know, the capabilities, what I could do within 2 days. I've had really good feedback from the streamlined reporting processes from projects. I've tried to bring that in line with places like National Lottery and so on, how, you know, how much pressure they put on organisations to report back on their progress and what have you. So I've taken that down to 6 monthly reporting as opposed to it was 3 monthly before. And I've tried to make the reporting process and the forms a bit more interactive, so not as onerous as, I know what it's like when you're like, oh God, no, another monitoring form to fill in, and you find yourself having to fill in pages and pages. And I've running alongside that is meetings every 6 months with project representatives as well. So I've managed to meet every organisation in these first few months as well. And so I did know a lot of you, but some people were new to me, so I can see some of them in the audience, so that's nice. And I know we're going to be hearing from some of you as well. So yeah, there's that, and as importantly, I've been going through a lot of the documents that were part of the handover, and in particular what's known as the impact panel. And they were set up in the early days of the project as sort of overseeing remit, but also a support to the board and to what's known as the core spokes, the people that are making the programme work and run effectively, and to get their expertise. And one of the key things that jumped out at me from the meeting that they had with the last organisation that was responsible for programme management, and it was speaking about, there seemed to be consensus that we need to be taking cognizance of who's coming next, I mean, I'm looking at myself, I'm looking at everybody in the room, and we're of varying ages and stages, but we need to think about, you know, the ones that are 12, 13 and so on and so on. What's, you know, if we don't encourage them and upskill them, then there's going to be this huge gap, and all the good work that we're doing together could quite easily get lost. And there was consensus that something needed to be done about that from the impact panel. So what I did was wrote a proposal looking at a UK-wide project which would see young Gypsy travellers as human rights defenders, activists by any other name, and we all know that everything that we do is underpinned by human rights, whether that's the environment, whether that's the right to a home, the right to an education, or what have you. So the board approved that, and that went out to tender, and I'm pleased to say that that was commissioned, and I think there's a couple of guys from the lead organ, that Article 12 in Scotland. I'm not seeing them in my picture, but I'm sure they're there, and I believe that some of you have been having more discussions around that. Another exciting point, just before I go on to my 2-page PowerPoint, is that I visited Armagh in Northern Ireland last summer on a baking hot day, I have to say, and they were having an open day, and it was just quite amazing to get to meet a lot of the Roma community in the Armagh area. There's a big Roma community there. There were also some Irish travellers there, so there was a Vardo, and there was a wee petting zoo thing where there was llama and all this kind of thing. It was an excellent day, but also gave me the opportunity to build up a great relationship with Peter and Fidelma from Armagh Arts, who I'm sure, Peter's here today, so I'm sure some of you have been having good chats with Peter anyway. So that, I think, was a major achievement, that we've managed to get Northern Ireland on board, and I don't think we could have got a better organisation than Arts. You've just totally run with this, Peter. It's quite amazing the work you've done, but I know you're all going to hear from that shortly anyway. So yeah, it's been 4 or 5 months I've been involved in the programme management, so there's been a lot to have been done, and I feel that I've kind of really found my feet now, and that, you know, people they know me and they know the changes that have been made, and I hope it's seen as positive. So what I'm going to do now is I've got 2 slides to share, and I'm going to have to ask you to excuse one is a map of the UK, and geography is not my strongest point, so if I'm saying there's Cheshire and it's nowhere near there, apologies. So I'm just going to start sharing my screen now. And start up slideshow. Is that good for you? Yep.
Yep, spot on, thank you.
Is that fine, yeah? Sorry, I'm getting a voice in my ear as well.
Yes, anyway, it's screen sharing here, it's fine. Yep, thank you.
Right, thank you. So there you go. Everybody's a star. Everybody that's involved in Moving for Change, as Violet had said, we're all fab, we're all brilliant, we're all working really hard for the common good. So I use stars instead of circles or dots on this. This is just to show you the wide reach that Moving for Change has made over the past 4 years. We're into year 5 now, I'm pretty sure, Violet. It's so exciting all the time that we forget how long the project's been running. Every day you're learning something new. So anyway, from Inverness in the Scottish Highlands, Ailey's here. I know today Ailey covers that area with her education at the Roadside Project. Of moving down to my area, which is actually Angus above Dundee, we had what we call micro projects. Last year we had David Pooler, who's the great grandson of Betsy White, the Scottish traveller author. He's getting into storytelling, so he made a video about his progress and the history of his granny and great granny and other family members. It's a beautiful wee video, and it just shows that what can be done with just a small amount of money, but a big amount of support and commitment and encouragement. And I think that's something Moving for Change is particularly good at. Article 12 covers much of Scotland. It's a Scotland-wide organisation, so that work that you see there in Scotland can all be attributed to Article 12. I'm just going to jump across the Irish Sea here, and I've got 2 stars here. One is the Armagh project, Peter's project. Peter's Armagh Arts got involved just last year, and they've become fully engaged in the professional mentorship project, and also digital inclusion project, which I know Peter's going to speak about today, so I won't say much more than that. Belfast is there because given the cost of living crisis, and being really aware of that whole thing about people's basic needs are met, you're not going to engage them in anything else. All you can think about is, can you afford a bottle of gas or whatever? So we introduced a programme of crisis grants last year, and an organisation in Belfast got engaged in that and distributed a fair amount of grants to gypsies and travellers across that area. I'm going to jump back across, and this is where I'm sorry, apologies for not being quite right with my geography, but that is the Scottish and English border, by the way. Those 2 stars at the top are just to show that we've done a fair bit of work through our History Month grants to individuals and small organisations that have been based maybe in the west, the northwest, but a lot of these projects have been connected to Appleby. So that's that whole kind of connection, making that kind of connection straight across. Moving down, I'm going to move down to York now, because that's where you all are today. And again, the amount of work that's been done in York, and of course, York Travellers Trust and Violet here, who's chairperson Moving for Change, and they're the ones that have organised and are hosting this event, which I'm really grateful for, because I've not been able to do as much as I should have been able to do. So yeah, great thanks to York Travellers Trust, and I'm sure Violet will share her work with people who are interested. Just moving down, we've got Liverpool here. We've got Irish Community Care from Liverpool, a key partner organisation in Moving for Change. Fantastic work there. Birmingham, Leicester, I can never pronounce Leicester. It's one of the spelling doesn't fit how you would pronounce it. We've got Gate Hearts, we've got Leicester Gate, we've all excellent organisations that are delivering at grassroots level for the community and engaging community members and upskilling, and getting that work, that the work is coming from the community rather than top down from lead organisations or organisations that don't really have any connection to the community. And not forgetting Wales. I know that Jay's here from Wales today, and Gypsy Traveller Wales, a lot of work going on down in Wales also, and we also have someone from Cardiff, a Gypsy Traveller from Cardiff, who's involved in our professional mentorship programme, which has been a really successful programme in terms of the people who have progressed through that. Just going down to, which is not quite the southeast, but this is where my geography is horrendous, Churches Network Together, who are working towards being across the UK in the longer term. You're going to hear shortly from Ivy and others from that excellent project. I'm not going to say much about it. I'll leave that to the people that are involved. And then going right down to the southwest, and again we've got Kushti Bok here today, who are going to speak about their programme, the work that they've been doing, which is a lot more than was originally agreed in the project back in the early days. So kudos to them, big shout out to them as well. So that was a bit of a whistle stop tour of the UK, and this next one is just some of the magic numbers. I know that people are rightly interested in where the finances are going, and how much is actually going out on commissioned projects, how much is going down to community level. Now this is one chart, one pie chart, which will be, I am actually working on the annual report for Moving for Change at the moment. That will be ready in the summer, and this is another change that I've introduced. This will be front facing, this will be up on the website as soon as it's signed off by our funders, National Lottery, and of course the board and others with an interest. But I thought today I would just let people see how much has gone out on the commissioning of projects this financial year, 2023 to 24. 5 professional mentorships, 9 continuing projects. That's fairly large scale projects which have been funded between between 2 and 3 years durations. Commissioned 3 new projects this year. We've had 2 digital inclusion projects, 8 Gypsy Roma Traveller History Month micro projects, and 366 crisis grants have been distributed across the 4 countries. And of that, over 500 of these families that were in receipt of these grants, there's over 500 children under the age of 16 within the groups of recipients. So it's, as we all know, it's not just about lifting adults and helping adults out in terms of crisis, it's also about helping children. So as I say, this and all the other costings will be in the annual report, which will be coming out probably late summer. By the time I've finished it and it's all gone through the process and the funders have signed it off. So I hope that gives you just a wee sort of idea of the work that's happened over the past year, and gives you confidence that funding, we're getting as much of the funds as possible out into the communities, and of course projects that are led and specifically for Gypsies, Roma and travellers. So I'm going to leave it at that. I'm going to stop sharing. I don't have people want to ask me some questions. I'm only here for this, so I don't know if people want to ask me a couple of questions before you move on to listen to the real interesting stuff that's around about projects. I'll leave that up to Doug to decide.
Hello, Lynne. Thank you so much. This is Nikki Chater from Gypsy Roma Traveller Friendly Churches. All that excellent work. I wondered, is there a directory of services and things available that online or something that, because it occurs to me we might want to refer to each other?
Well, what we have, there is the network. We have the network. That is a list of everybody that's signed up to be a network member of Moving for Change. Doug is our comms man, as I like to call him, and he produces a newsletter that puts all the information, updates, what's going on, which goes out across the network. So what I've done in the past is always BCC'd those emails that go out to the network for GDPR purposes. But I hear what you're saying, and if people were happy for me to change that and show people's emails as within that network, then that would open it up to people being able to contact each other. Doug also spotlights projects on the Moving for Change website, so that's also there as well. And of course there's these opportunities coming together, albeit just once a year, for people to meet up face to face and make those contacts, which will hopefully last beyond the immediate future, and indeed long lasting, hopefully, to keep that whole UK wide us all working together. Did that answer that for you?
Is there anyone with any more questions for Lynne? Silence, came the angry reply. Ladies and gentlemen, a big round of applause for Lynne.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. As you may know, we're recording this via Zoom and so forth, so Lynne will be watching you from afar over the course of the day, the great big eye right in the sky. I've been waiting all year to use that joke. For those of you who aren't actually on the network, just in order to follow up from Nikki's query there, if you're not on the network or you're not subscribed to the newsletter, just let me know, pass us over your details and so forth, and we can sign you up to either or both of those over the course of the day. That way you can be more informed as to what's going on in Moving for Change. Now, we've got not one, not two, but three presenters now for the next presentation, which is from the Churches Network Sanctuary Stopping Project, also known as Gypsy Roma Traveller Friendly Churches. So if I can ask Ivy Manning, Reverend Nikki Chater and the Reverend Jonathan Herbert to step up, please.
Good. Hi everyone. Got no shoes, so a little bit nervous with no shoes. So I'm just going to introduce who we are, and then Jonathan and Nikki will be picking up some of the slides, their expertise. So we used to be known as the Churches Network for Gypsies, Traveller and Roma. I think it ran for about 12 years. And then last January we rebranded because our former chair stepped down, and now we're known as Gypsy Roma Traveller Friendly Churches. So we are thankful to MfC for funding us, because it's allowed us to grow and secure more funding from the Anglican Church. So who are we? Well, I'm not clergy for one, or lay. So we're a mixed group of around 14 and a steering group of us that drive the vision. We're mixed denominations, so we will have Baptist, Catholic, Anglican. We did used to have Light and Life support. Sadly, they no longer sit on our steering group, but we still support them and their mission and what they achieve. So we've also got, as part of our steering group, we've got an implementation team. So we have a wider steering group and then a smaller group that will meet more frequently to talk about vision and what we want to do. So we've got our chair, which is Reverend Nikki Chater, which is now a canon, which is a great honour. We've got Jonathan. Everyone knows Jonathan. He's also a canon. Yeah, Jonathan's also a canon, but he doesn't like to say that. Clearly, he's not got his dog collar on today, so there's a reason for that. No protesting, Jonathan. So also we've got a mix of Gypsies and Traveller and Roma that's part of our steering group. Throughout different times, we've had some Roma community members, some Irish travellers, some Romany Gypsies, and we have had interest from new travellers and also an input. Sadly, not everyone is down with the religious side of it, but still support what we do. So what we're trying to do is achieve sanctuary stopping. So it's just negotiated stopping, but using church land, albeit very difficult. So through that, we've had a different navigating journey to try and get to sanctuary stopping, because we've got people that sit right on the very top going, yes, let's use some land, and everyone underneath going, oh, we're not really sure about that. So that's kind of who we are, a little bit in a snapshot. So I'm going to move on, and I believe it's going to be Nikki doing some important stuff. Am I right?
You just press it.
Oh, that one. There we go. No, Jonathan. You do. Launch. Yeah.
Who we are.
No. There.
There we are. So there's the launch. 9th of June last year, we'd asked a year before for the Archbishop of York, who sits in the cathedral over there, to come to Appleby Horse Fair to meet some travellers. He's a good man. because when he was Bishop of Chelmsford, he was invited by the Catholic bishop to go to Dale Farm, and he was shocked by what he saw. But the fact he went meant he had loads of abuse, and a death threat from someone for supporting travellers. That's just... So he very quickly got what racism against travellers is about. Also on the 9th of June, the Archbishop of Canterbury, Justin Welby, was coming to Dorset. So I suggested, could it be that we put the two events together? And we were wanting to launch Gypsy Roma Traveller Friendly Churches. And so we had an event with the Archbishop of York on the back of a flat wagon going through Appleby. And we had Justin Welby sitting next to, there we are, Leon Rawlings, son of Eileen Hughes and Dave Rawlings, famous Dorset travellers who travelled by horse and wagon for 50 years, even when it was becoming difficult. And he actually got married. I did his wedding on Saturday. So congratulations to him. The launch we did at the Church of the Good Shepherd, which already was a Gypsy Roma Traveller Friendly Churches. The travellers who go there said, this is our church. This is where we have our funerals, this is where we have our weddings, our baptisms. And they'd supported a non-contact boxing club for a number of years there. So it was a great place to launch friendly churches. And we know there are friendly churches. Well, we don't know about all the friendly churches, do we, that there are in the country. I've just found another one in the New Forest, where they're, yeah. So gradually we're building this network up. Next one. That's you.
Okay, so Jonathan said what we're trying to do. We're trying to help churches that are already friendly understand and not be frightened and promote it, so other churches can catch the vision and share it and then put all that on a website to sort of say, look, you can do this. We're doing it in different ways, and why we're doing it I'll come on to. You'll be aware, more aware than me, about the 2022 legislation affecting people being able to stop while they're travelling. You'll know very well about that. Before that, the 2019 General Synod of the Church of England passed a resolution. I've highlighted key bits which I'll ring out. To speak out publicly against racism and hate crime directed against Gypsies, Irish travellers and Roma, and urge the media to stop denigrating and victimising these communities. That was a key point. Move that forward. Another key point, another key point was to ask each diocese to appoint a specialist chaplain. And the final key point particularly was about land. To ask church bodies to play their part in lobbying for and enabling land to be made available for such sites, temporary stopping sites, working with local and national governments. And the final thing was to coordinate and work to get shared plans to make traveller stopping points available across England. Now this is 2019. The Church of England didn't know that the 2022 legislation was coming. But what it gave us was the opportunity to have a platform to stand on. Although we're working across all churches and all denominations, because they'd said that in 2019, we could then call them to fulfill what they'd said they'd do. Now, this is quite difficult. And we do this in lots of different ways. We answer inquiries, give practical support, we talk with local authorities, we're educating people. We'll come on a bit more as to why it's difficult, in particularly the Church of England, but all churches, and why you can't just get the person at the top says it happened. General Synod passed this resolution, so it should happen, shouldn't it? Parliament passes a law, the government enacts it, we're all required to follow it. Why doesn't it work that way in the church? It doesn't, and I'll explain why. the Church of England, as you'll see later, it's like Parliament without government. So there's lots of talking and passing good ideas, but nothing underneath to make those things happen, which is what we're trying to do, to show people. Now Ivy's going to take us on a bit more.
I want to go back. Nikki took my slide, but that's fine. Sorry. So she made a start, so it made it easier. So initially at first, obviously we worked on the concept of sanctuary stopping. So we were exploring all these avenues, talking to all these various bodies within the Anglican Church. We come up against quite a lot of opposition, and people said, well, we need to get to know the communities a bit more. So I think you need to take a step back. So we did take a step back, but we took 10 steps in front as well, but sidestepped. So we decided that we'd come in and be Gypsy Roma traveller friendly churches. That way, we had a conversation on the table about sanctuary stopping. So through this, we've gained traction from local authorities, and we're part of different traveller boards, working groups, where we're trying to implement local plans. So we gain knowledge that side of it through the planning side, and then we enact someone locally. So like, for example, in Enfield, we have an assistant chaplain who is working with a local archdeacon to look at land. Now, albeit there's been difficulties with this because the archdeacon is also facing opposition for the local plan. So the Anglican Church in that area wants to sell off that land as part of a local plan, and they would get £25 an hectare, which is not a lot of money for a development when you think about it. So this archdeacon is pushing back and leasing land to local farmers to try and prevent this development. So again, we're coming in at two angles. So local authorities are prepared to do policies for the local churches or parishes or cathedrals to say, if you want to use your land, we will take ownership of it. You just need to give us the land. We will be responsible. But still, local people not in our area. So again, we're trying to think of another angle. Let's look at the education side of it. So we're trying to work with schools, because again, they have an encouragement. There's always someone on a diocesan board. This is part of someone who's a local PCC. There's always someone in a governance structure who's within a church. It might even be a church warden. They will hold another remit somewhere else. So we're creating some guidance, which is trying to hopefully assist them with risk assessments, and it might also be guidance on a reference from someone being released from prison. So we're working with other chaplains who has legal knowledge and background who might be writing a reference to go, okay, this is what you do and this is an encouragement. Again, trying to break down those fears and barriers. Being a support, so my phone's on 24/7. I might get a WhatsApp from someone going, what can we do here? We've also been not trying to do cultural awareness because we understand within the sector, everyone is doing cultural awareness training somewhere. But what we do get asked is, for example, North London Hospice. They have a major team that do end-of-life care, and part of their team they have paramedics and nurses. Now they are having issues of attending people at end-of-life care going onto sites. And they have no knowledge of the community, but what they do know is that they should be allowed to go on there without police presence. So they want to know why they're being told they need police presence to go on for, an emergency call. So we've been having informal conversations and being a support network for a paramedic. They might give us a message or drop us an email and go, okay, we've had this incident, is this normal, can we do this? We are constantly being asked to do more, but we try and divert them to other organisations because obviously other people are more specialist knowledge in cultural awareness training, even though I've been part of that team before, but I think we need to try and streamline as much as possible. We get lots of inquiries through our website, and it might be through social media. So it might be, is there a chaplain in your area? Do you know anyone that's running a diabetic clinic? So we try and signpost where we can. If we can't signpost them, we're jumping and trying out where we can. So we're very broad for just a small team of us. But as I say, we have got a wider remit with support networks. There might be someone in Cambridge, and we might go, okay, you best link with this person because they're local. But again, we try and obviously tack into local organisations because knowledge is best. So we're trying to use social media and the website as much as we can. I mean, I'm not a comms person, but we do have an admin staff, Paul Sayers, who also works at Roman Lutheran Trust as an education champion. So Paul normally covers our Twitter. I do a little bit of Facebook. But again, our predominantly is we're trying to use a website as an umbrella. So everyone else in the sector, all their good practice will go on the website, and it's a link for clergy to go to, or someone that's part of our network and a wider network to go, okay, we need help in this area, this organisation's there. So again, anyone with anything add in, can send it to us, we can upload it to the website. Again, it just goes to a slightly different audience that might be useful in time to come. You see, there's a few little stats here, just trying to build it out. I didn't create the PowerPoint, by the way. You will find out in a bit who did. So we're going to go, Nikki's going to come back on because we've been planes, trains and automobiles for about 18 months now. We are getting a little bit tired, but it is fun. Nikki?
That's a nice picture of me and some people. We got, because of being the chair of Gypsy Roma Traveller Friendly Churches, a small number of us from small organisations were invited by the Church of England to go to Alabama to meet with the Union of Black Episcopalians, who are outside. That's the equivalent of the Church of England, only in America. And the Black Episcopalians are outside of the church, but in the church, speaking back to the church and speaking to government. And it was 44 years they've been doing this, and they've achieved major change. So we were invited, I was invited on behalf of us, along with some others from different organisations who were priests, clergy, to come and learn with all the people from that church. How have they done that? And how might we do something similar? How can we get change in the church and in society and in our institutions? So that's why we went. That was fun. That was last June. And I got about 4 days notice. No, a little bit more than that. It was about 4 weeks notice. But, Freiburg, Germany, that's me and Martin Burrow, who's the past chair of Gypsy Roma, of Churches Network for Gypsy Roma Travellers, which is what we were. We both got chance. Freiburg was the Diocese of Europe having a conference on racial justice. We kind of elbowed our way in and sort of said there's lots and lots of Roma people and they're the biggest disadvantaged group across Europe. So if you want to talk about racial justice, you really need to talk about them. And it literally was elbowing our way in. So we got, I think we got, 1 minute. Yeah, we did. We got 1 minute each. We got a 2-minute slot because we weren't on the programme. I got 1 minute and talked about the prejudice, and Martin got 1 minute and he told a story of walking past a Roma family who weren't allowed to go into the church that they were sitting outside of. So there you go. Dures, Albania, there's nice pictures there, the best. Where that was Roma Networks is an organisation, we heard the history, they are, how old are they? 40? 10 years. Oh, 10 years, that's right, they're 10 years old, and in 10 years they've reached this conference, mainly Roma people from all over the world, sharing together, and they are Christian organisations, again, interdenominational, international. We had 40 different countries represented, and they were learning together about faith. They were worshipping, we were having Bible study, but as well, we were doing lots of things to try to improve the life of Roma people. So learning how to run a business, learning about reading and writing, you're learning how to use the Bible as a way of learning to read and write, learning how to employ people, learning about nutrition, learning about education, lots of things that are important for life and for success because they want people to prosper. And we learned about the history, which is interesting, but a story for another day. Budapest. We were contacted by the Methodist Church in America to ask, what is the Methodist Church in UK doing to work with Gypsy Roma Traveller people? We only know of one Methodist chaplain who we helped to commission at Appleby Fair last year. Maybe some of you were there. He was commissioned by the Archbishop of York to be a chaplain, and he told them about us, so we were contacted, and the person who we went for us was from the Salvation Army, because he works with a lot of Roma people and he's helped Roma people set up Roma-led churches in this country. So he went on our behalf to a small conference in Budapest, Hungary, of Methodists working with Roma people in churches there. And now I was going to talk about pushback.
This is the fun bit. I would like to note, because I should have said it from the beginning, our mission is not to convert. We're not about conversion of Gypsies and Traveller and Roma into the church for any religion. We're about converting people that are already converted. They feel that they're converted, but when you have a conversation, actually they're not, so don't preach they're converted. So I just wanted to stress that, because a lot of people think, oh, this is a Christian organisation and you're trying to get people into churches. No, we're not. We're trying to allow space where if people freely want to go in, they can, and they can access the service without discrimination. So we do get a lot of pushback, and this is why I wanted to note this, and you wouldn't think so. So one of the things we've had said to us is, if they come in the area, the lead's going to come off the roof of the church. How are we going to combat this? Light and Life Convention, that's a pagan practice. They shouldn't be using our facilities. Mass invasions, if we allow one in, we're going to allow them all in. You can't face racism because you're not black or brown. So these are just some of the key points. And this is just not a one-off. This happens quite frequently, because when you think you're in a conference with 400 or 500 people, you are going to get a few views and quite a lot. You know, I've been there, quite a lot of people don't want to actually talk to me when I identify who I am. So, I don't know if Jonathan wants to explain. I think this is, we've got to give him a slide, you know. He wants to tell you how we've been dealing with our pushback too.
I think the churches are in a good position to counteract racism, to build confidence with the Gypsy Roma traveller friendly communities, because over 2/3 of travellers in the last 2021 census said they're Christian. And churches have been trusted, particularly where they've done good practice, when they stood up for people, when they've welcomed people. And so we're trying to educate people within the churches and wider Christian communities to say, by just giving people some more knowledge. Why are there so many gypsies, travellers and Roma in the criminal justice system? It's over 5% of adults, isn't it? And those communities make up maybe 0.5% of the general population, something badly wrong. And then when you talk about children and young people, it's 11%, isn't it? It's just shocking. Something's going very badly wrong. We've looked at education. Why isn't education working better for Gypsy, Roma and travellers? And then specifically for the churches and church ministers, particularly, we looked at funeral customs, graveyards, often hotly contested, and huge amount of cultural misunderstanding there, and a real need to educate people running churchyards as to people's deeply held cultural beliefs and practices. So helping to understand that. And it's a long old process, isn't it? Changing hearts and minds. I've just been to Palestine, and they've had 80 years of kind of oppression, the Palestinian people, and they've struggled and struggled, and they reminded me. I met so many people who reminded me of travellers. The Palestinians, they live in big extended families. They somehow find a way to survive, and they've got this lovely word, Arabic word sumud. It means kind of we're going to keep going, we're going to keep resisting. Whatever people throw at us, we'll have sumud, and things will change eventually. That's what they say, and I believe that's what this movement is all about. Keeping at it, and things do change. Sumud, new word, but really good one. Next one is Nikki. Yeah. Oh yes.
Oh yeah, that's just another list of places that we went to being built together. What was the being built together? Oh yeah, that was the Church of England coming together as trying to think about how do we use inclusive language and inclusive services that represent all communities and not just white, middle-class, educated people, which is what you often find, particularly in the Church of England, but often in all churches. Mann, and that's an organisation which is similar to the Black Episcopalians. It's within the Anglican Church, but outside the Anglican Church. trying to speak back to the institution and get change and get inclusion. I think it's Anglican Minority Ethnic Network, Amen. And the USPG conference, we are invited to present at the USPG conferences later this summer. The three of us will be there, about beyond barriers. So that's talking to all Christians and Christian leaders who might want to go about how do we break barriers. Racial Justice Sunday, I was invited to attend the Westminster Abbey service where Justin Welby preached on behalf of Gypsies and Travellers. Well, actually not on behalf of Gypsies and Travellers, but on behalf of Church's Network for Gypsy, Roma and Traveller people, which is a different thing. So on behalf of Church's Network for Gypsy, Roma, Traveller Friendly, I was there, and there were therefore invited guests from the communities in the congregation. Difference is a new programme. The Archbishop of Canterbury's trying to help young people and adults learn about how you negotiate, how you sort out when you're very different from each other, how do you avoid breakdown, how do you do something constructive. And again, we were invited to the launch of that. And Ivy and Pacey and Michael, we're all interviewed to be part of the Difference programme, which is in this country but also internationally. So we will have Gypsy Roma Traveller perspective included in that, which wasn't going to be 6 months ago. So that's there in this Difference programme, which is wonderful. And I've told you about the Methodist Church Conference in Budapest. And then we finally come on to what I told you about earlier, which is the layers, why we're having difficulty getting through. Just to give you a quick snapshot of this, do you want to do this?
I don't actually think it's very interesting, but it shows why we need some mud, why we need to keep at it, because it just, you've got layers and layers, and onions are good, like an onion. The Archbishops, the House of Bishops, National Lead, Safeguarding Bishop, the Archbishops' Council, Church Commissioners, General Synod, and the Church, of course, is still linked with the state. So Parliament, there's a second Church Estates Commissioner, MP Andrew Selou, who's briefed against travellers, spoken against travellers in Parliament, and we took him to task for that. So we had I had a very interesting conversation with him. Diocesan Bishop, Board of Finance, people with the money, Diocesan Synod, Diocesan Safeguarding Advisor, Diocesan Communicator, Archdeacons, and then you can get all them on side, about site, and then you've got to, local parish. You've got to get past them. So, but the church has 1% of all the land in the United Kingdom is owned by the church one way or another. So a bit of that has got to go for traveller sites and stopping places. And we will get there. We will get there. And then you've got cathedrals. On the 28th of May, put it in your diary for next year, Salisbury Diocese are putting on a conference on gypsies, travellers, and combating racism against gypsies and travellers in the iconic Salisbury Cathedral. Beautiful building, and there'll be workshops and children's activities outdoors in the close. 28th of April 2025. And Kushti Bok will be there, and churches, friendly churches. 28th of May. 28th of May. Got it? Peculiars and responsibilities, all kinds of. Church of England, there's loads of schools. I do, and lots of other chaplains do a lot of work in schools to educate people early. Church commissioners, have a lot of land, and we want a bit, please. What's coming up next? Do you want to finish us off?
Yeah, I'll finish it off. I'd just like to say on the governance, just note that they're all independent government bodies. So not one, the left hand doesn't talk to the right hand. So you reach one person, they go, you need to talk to this department. You get to that department, they go, you need to talk to that department. You need to join the two up. And as for the 1% of land, there's 422 hectares that's not being used, has no buildings on. So that could be marshland, could be on a floodplain, could be brownfield, could be greenbelt. 422 hectares not used. Right, so what are we doing next? So we're delivering some workshops at the upcoming USPG conference, which is a 2-day conference, and we will have 2 workshops that will run over the 2 days. So there will be the trio of us. We've got a webinar on health coming up in September, so we'll have various organisations inputting into that. We're going to have many discreet conversations that we don't never talk about publicly, and we're going to have some very loud conversations. So we're going to continue to engage on all levels on the church, albeit we have public head figures, so we have supports of archbishops and bishops, but their support is amazing, but we really need support with grassroots on the ground. So that's where we're going to try and home in and focus as much as possible. We're also working with the Oxford Diocese to try and create a chaplain post, which then will be an encouragement to other dioceses to get some chaplains in post or clergy to undertake this work, because it's difficult for us trying to be up and down the country. But what I would like to say is, before I end, and I'm looking at someone over the back, we do have our new ambassador, Abeline. Would you like to raise your hand? So Abeline's going to be working in the West Midlands and Warwickshire, and she's already been undertaking some of this work, so that's why we honoured her with the title of ambassador. And we're just trying to think of a title for Lila Grace, because it's only fair that she gets some credit too. She does attend all the time. So we will be trying to tailor some more work within the Midlands, because also they've just been granted by the Racial Justice Fund, which is the Archbishop's Commission, I think 2.1 million? 1.2. Oh, 1.2 million, sorry, give an extra one there. And that's to work across 4 dioceses to do, 6, is it? 6, to do racial justice work. So there's a new post that starts in July, so we will start some new engagement around that. But also through, again, Moving for Change funding us, we have been able to get funded by the Archbishop's Office for a 3-year programme to work on sanctuary places, not sanctuary stopping. But it's still the same thing. But again, they recognised that we needed to come in at another angle to be able to get a sanctuary stop. So that's why we're Gypsy Roma Traveller Friendly Churches. So our body is to get youth into churches if they wish to understand the governance and all the other work that comes with it. So finally, we are at the end, I think. Any questions, give us a shout. One more slide, which is dedicated to someone in the room, Paishi, who created the PowerPoint, not me. We were just the mouthpiece. So if there's any questions, Doug, Mike. No, I've got 2 mics at home. They're not here.
Ivy.
Yes, go on. Go on.
So just to everyone in the room, it's just as easy as sending an email out to Interfaith or anyone in your area that deals with things. Just send this to them, and that's how easy it is to spread the word. You can all do email. Just Ivy will send you this in a email.
Yeah, PDF.
And just send it to all your local interfaith groups, all your local churches. That's how easy it is to spread the word.
Thank you. Hi, Wynne Lawler from Irish Community Care. Really powerful stuff, thank you. Really exciting. We work with about 2/3 of our community are Irish travellers in the Northwest. And I'm really interested in the conversations you may have been having with the Catholic Church and where the gaps are, so that we can, as organisations, start to help with that. Because I do know that we have very similar kind of hierarchical structures, and they are also either as welcoming or barriering as the experiences that you've been talking about. And it makes a huge difference, whether your parish priest is somebody who is understanding of your culture or not, for your faith, for your community, and for your own individual kind of life experiences. So I'm just really curious as to kind of what's been happening and how can we do more to help, really, because I'm linked in with a lot of the local stuff in the Northwest because of our communities, and we're always saying, you know, trying to bring priests and the faith community together. So yeah, if there's anything we can do, just kind of give us let us know what that is, please.
Thanks, Wynne. Now, there was a national chaplain for the Catholic Church, which was Father Dan Mason, who's based in Essex. Father Dan stepped down, again, because it was a volunteer role on top of his duties already. Then there was a national chaplain put into place, Deacon Rick Jones. Sadly, he's not actually undertaking his job and refuses to meet anyone. And I will say this because I've been in meetings with him. So what the Catholic Church decided to do, so Bishop Paul, who sits in Westminster, is working with the Archdeacon David Lawrence, who is now going to take on that remit, but not technically national, but will pick up national inquiries. So they've just opened a new chaplaincy team, which I'm happy to forward anyone. If you sign up to our newsletter, I can resend you it. The details are in there. So David is working with different organisations. They're doing a lot through Holy Communal, and educating and working with Irish travellers. Now, in terms of land, we know that the Catholic Church don't own a lot because the Church of England stole most of it many years ago. But albeit they do have a small bit of land. Now, off the record, I don't know how true this is, it's through exploring stages. In the Diocese of Luton, they are looking at land use attached to a Catholic church. This is just through an email chain. We don't know how far this has gone, so we are investigating, so another person's tasked to do that. So I can keep in contact with and give you any developments on that because it might be useful. But again, I think just reach out to your local clergy and just have informal conversations. Or, you know, we're happy to do that. You give us a local church, we're happy to do that and do that as friendly churches for you and keep you linked in.
Beyonce, Margaret,
Yes.
Margaret Clitheroe Trust as well, set up by an inspirational Roman Catholic priest, Father John Chadwick, got its own website. Margaret Clitheroe was from York, Catholic martyr from York, but do great work with Irish travellers, mainly in the south of England, mainly in the south at the moment, but they're wanting to expand the work.
Well, they do with the Irish chaplaincy for prisoners overseas as well, so we do some work with them, but they're reliant mostly on volunteers, the Irish chaplaincy for prisoners overseas. Yeah. But they do have a brilliant report they did a few years ago called Hidden Voices for Irish traveller, Gypsy traveller communities in prison. So that's useful if anybody wants to read that. But yeah, everybody's struggling financially and kind of support-wise. So yeah, just if we can signpost people to you then, and then you can signpost people back out, can't you? So cheers. Thank you so much. Brilliant, brilliant presentation. And the PowerPoint was spectacular.
One more here and then we'll be with you.
Yeah. What I tried to work with a church down in Ashbourne, and it was really good to start with. The bit of land in question, part of it has been put to one side to become like a new burial ground. So of course the families wouldn't go on the consecrated ground. You know, it was the other part of the ground. And at first the church, as we was working with the church, really quite well. But unfortunately, it's like what happens with the planning permission, the planning stuff. There was a couple of calls that the vicar made life hell for the vicar, and I really felt for him because he was getting people knocking on his door, and he says, "I'm really going to find this very sort of like difficult." And in the end, they had to come back with the decision that. They couldn't sort of help us do that. And I know it's a really hard decision to make, and it was really hard for him because the way some of these people pressure is really bad. And I don't know how. And he tried his best, and you know there was a lot of people going in and doing awareness talks and things like that. And it must be hard for him because this particular family's got some really difficult living conditions and people that's disabled. it was really, I felt really heartened in a way, because a little while later, the family was so desperate to get onto somewhere. Even though local people, not the church, local people had moved tyres and big bricks and goodness knows what in front of this gateway. And somebody arranged for those to be moved. and the family did go onto the ground. They weren't on the part of the consecrated ground. And in a way, because that happened, it was a breathing sigh of relief for him, because he says, oh, well, he says, we'll just give them a fortnight. So in a way, we did manage to get them on there for a little bit of a break for a fortnight. But how are we going to get, when push comes to shove, and the real difficult decision there is, how is it going to, any ideas?
Well, thanks for sharing that, Siobhan. I mean, it'd be good to get that as a case study, because again, it highlights that it is possible, and sanctuary stopping, albeit it's just temporary, as negotiated stopping. Now, I was at a church housing commissioner event about 18 months ago. I was invited to speak by our dear friend Chris Beals, who really helped us out within the Anglican Church. Sadly passed away in January. And there was this lovely little old lady there, must have been in her 80s. And she lived in this village, and it wasn't far from the Gloucester diocese. And they are a social housing development also. And they decided they wanted to build these 400 homes outside of this village, because obviously they had a need, and it was in the local plan. And it was all on church land. So the church agreed to it, because they were a social housing provider. This poor vicar used to have toddler groups, crochet groups, everything you can mention. All the local residents used it. There was a group of mums decided that they would target this vicar because he agreed for the land use for the development. They sent him death threats, slashed his tyres. He had to retire in the end and went on sick leave because he was suicidal. Now this was nothing to do with Gypsies and Travellers, so this just highlights, again, not on my patch, obviously especially Gypsies and Travellers. So one good bit of news is that we can share is that just before Appleby there will be an open stop with a church for one day only, and they will provide utilities and bins and a safe place for Gypsies and Travellers to pull over. That's new. This is through one of our steering group members, who's based in the northeast, and it's in our local church. So churches are starting to slowly come around, but if we get more case studies and stories like you've shared, Siobhan, we can use that as examples and demonstrations to go, please don't be fearful, because this can happen. These families stayed for 2 weeks, there were no issues, they managed to, and if we can demonstrate that they access services, it gives a need for more, because what the Archbishop's Commission's office has also done as part of our funding is give us a very small amount of funding that if there is a sanctuary stop, we can provide bins or toilets or water at our cost. We have a budget for that. So they are willing to do that, and they understand that churches may need that incentive because they might not have the facilities, they might not have the money to be able to do it. So we do have emergency funds if there's a sanctuary stop. So if there is any stories, please send them in to us, because that way we can keep sharing. And I wouldn't want to say outing someone to go, look, you can do one better than them. But I think ultimately that's what it is. If they can do that, you can step up to the mark, you know, because there's no reason why you shouldn't. So hopefully that's helpful, but that's kind of where we're at. We're still navigating ourselves at the minute.
We're running over now, so I'm going to have this as the last question, if that's okay.
There's Ellie behind.
Very quick question, and I think people have answered it. I belong to a massive church in Watford, Hertfordshire. We've got over 1,000 people. We have 3 services a day, and yet I've never heard of this. And we do so much work for the community. Well, I don't, but you know, the church does. So, and I know we've spoken about how we get this out, but this is something I want to take back to my church and say, guys, you really, really need to be looking at this, because this is massive, not just the sanctuary stopping, but trying to encourage travellers into church without the discrimination. And my church is all about non-discrimination, I hope. So how do we get this message across to make sure big churches like Soul Survivor, 1,000 people, can get travellers in? I
think it's breaking down the fears, taking that flyer back. I a frank conversation, get them to meet with us. Because remember, literacy is very low within the communities. So if someone did want to go to church, and this is why Light and Life's quite popular, because it's orally led down generation to generation. If you go into church, you can't read or write, and you get this book handed to your service sheet, half of the words you can't read anyway. I mean, I struggle to pronounce them. I've got one of these apps where I just type it in and then it reads it back, so I make sure I'm saying apostle right and Gentiles, because I struggle. So you've got to remember that gypsies and travellers are kind of in that same boat. But again, that's another issue, is people just make the assumption all the time. Now, there is intercultural churches where basically they are Anglican churches, but they're having different denominations come and use their churches and having different services in different languages, bringing different food, bringing people together. Sometimes it might not work. They might have a service in the morning for one community and one in the afternoon, but it's making that space accessible. You know, people might want to rent the hall and have a christening. Let's not discriminate, you know, because they're gypsies or travellers, and we know that's a big thing. Don't allow them to use services. I think have a frank conversation, link in with us, and we're more than happy to come down. And again, there's enough evidence and material to suggest otherwise. And if they are Anglican, we can add some pressure from the Racial Justice Unit, if that helps. Oh, that's good. I think Doug said we've got to go now, but you can catch us in a bit, if you like. Sorry. Yeah, it's on the floor. It should be on the flyer.
All right, so if the socials are on the flyer, if they aren't, then we have on Twitter, X, it is Gypsy, Roma and Traveller Friendly Churches, or at Sanctuary Places. I can't get Facebook because I have to make a Facebook account, which is dumb. And the website is also sanctuaryplaces.co.uk, and our YouTube is Gypsy, Roma and Traveller Friendly Churches, or at Sanctuary Places.
Many thanks to you, Ivy, and also the Canons, Nikki Chater and Jonathan Herbert. And also, obviously, to Paisley there. I feel as though my job as a comms officer is limited now. We're running a little over, but I think it's important that we take a little bit of a comfort break. So if we take 10 minutes out to grab some coffee, stretch our legs, do whatever we need to do, and meet you back in about 10 minutes' time, that would be lovely. Thank you. We've had a slight change of programme. There's been a little crossover. So now, if I can ask for the presentation from Kushti Bok for Betty and Abby. Thank you. And friends.
Yes. Yes, very much with friends. We have said that they can come and stand up here because we think it's lovely, but I have said that they need to practice standing as statues. Can we see your best statues? Go on, where's your statue? Show me the statue. That's it, that's it. Cool, and yeah, you go.
The T-shirt says, "This girl can change the world." I think these girls can change the world. They're not 12, 14, but they're getting there. Right, sorry to have tried to change the agenda. Well, I did change the agenda. I hope everyone's happy about that. Simply because I wanted to join up some dots and follow on from the churches, friendly churches. Because friendly churches, as I said, started out as the Churches Network, and it was originally chaired by Reverend Roger Redding, MBE, who is a Kushti Bok trustee, and a lovely lady called Jenny Galushka, who was also a member of Kushti Bok, was very involved with the Churches Network, and Elizabeth Selby. And I am so, so proud because Reverend Jonathan Herbert is also a member of Kushti Bok. And I am so proud of the work he's doing and with our Ivy. And I think she's not pushy Manning, I think she's marvellous Manning. So I just wanted to say, and also that the visit from the Archbishop of Canterbury was actually hosted by Kushti Bok. So I just wanted to add that in. I'm sorry to be a bit pushy as well, but you know, we've got very little resources We're fine with funding at the moment, but with time, we've got very little time, but we do what we can. Jonathan was also was the one who actually said that we need some advocacy workers because it was all too much again. And luckily, we have a partnership, a 5-year partnership with Citizens of Ice, which we were hoping to host a conference later in the year, but because of resources, we may find we may have to put it back until next year. But I just wanted everyone to be aware of the good work that's being done in collaboration with Citizens of Ice. So now we have 2 advocacy workers for the whole of Dorset. One of them is my daughter, Karen. Another one is a lovely lady who we believe is European Roma, Christina. And we are looking for another part-time one to manage the BCP area. So because of that, we now have more time resources to deal with the project that we really love, which started off as welcome packs for gypsies and travellers, but we had to change to information packs because some of the councils thought that we were telling travellers, you're all welcome, all come to Dorset. so it's now information packs. So now I'm going to hand you over to Abby.
Are you going to read the first one?
Am I? Right, sorry, it's me again. Right.
Oh, hang on. Yeah.
Yeah. Our goal in this Moving for Change project is to work towards the development of a permanent site and a transit site for the BCP area. Now, BCP Council is in Dorset, which is very confusing. We have 2 councils, Dorset Council and BCP Council, but they identify as Dorset, so sometimes it gets confusing. So we want a permanent site, as I say, and we're also looking for a transit site. And that is my aim, is to have one by the end of 2026, is it? 2026? Yeah. And we also wish to update Dorset Council's transit site in Piddlehinton because nationwide it's known as a really horrible place. Now, Abby?
Cool. So I just wanted to give you a bit of a backstory to this project, which was Kushti Bok sitting in many, many years of meetings with our heads in our hands in despair about being the last people to know when unauthorised encampments come into the county. So we would find ourselves scrabbling around and really trying to make sense of what happened, were the right procedures followed, and then, of course, the backlash that happens while you're trying to gather all of that information. So we had this question for many years, what can we do? What can we do together as a charity to stop this mess? And then we saw the funding for Moving for Change. So that's when we realised that we could make this project, and as Betty said, information packs for roadside travellers. And what we wanted to do with that information pack is really understand so the information pack will have things like colouring books. That first design that you saw was the picture of the front of the colouring book, service providers, lists of numbers and everything, a Lush soap, and many other things. But the main thing that we really wanted to do was to try and capture the travellers' experiences when they were coming into our county. So we hear what everyone else thinks, but we don't really often hear what their experience was. And so we've created a booklet to try and get that exchange of information. And when we got this, no, do you want to go? No?
Carry on.
Oh, I thought you were. And so, no, I forgot what I was going to say.
That's okay, go on to the next one.
The next one, yes. So as we were building this project, Danny Tamberlin, who is the Chief Inspector, got in touch with Betty and said, well, it was to do with the new law. He was very worried about how it was being used, and he wanted to talk with us to make sure, to see how they could do it better, or to really capture what's happening there. And he found out about this project, and we've created a working group. And the working group is the liaison officer, the chief inspector, and the head of public protection, housing and communities. And we meet up to discuss the approach to authorised encampments. So what we really want is a joined up approach where we know exactly what happens, in what order, what checks are done, and what information is captured from that. And so we're working together in that group to also create a leaflet or a booklet from all of the service providers and Kushti Bok to be joined up together in that approach.
Ongoing discussions with the local authorities regarding the establishment of a transit site. Well, I've been talking to them for years and years and years about this. Hopefully, we will make some headway. As I said, that is our goal. Recently, in BCP Council local development plan, they identified a site for gypsies and travellers. When this site was first publicised, of course, there was uproar, as there usually is, from the local residents. They didn't realise that actually gypsies and travellers had stopped on there before the houses were ever built. But they were objecting. We visited the site. We have a member of Kushti Bok, Brian Keat, who sadly can't be here today, who's actually a very good researcher, and he has researched the site, and firstly we found out that there is contamination on the site. So therefore we actually went to one of the residents' meetings to get more information, because we want to know if it is contaminated. So it seems that it might be. We've also we work with the Oak Project. I expect many of you have heard of the Oak Project. They're not here today because they're actually funded by an American firm. So we have been working with the Oak Project. Now they've allowed us the use, I suppose for want of a better word, of Simon Rushton, who is an excellent planning expert. And he has been down to Branksome Triangle, and it's a wonderful site when you first look at it. It's all hard standing, it's very big. You could make it into 2 or 3 smaller encampments. I think it's for 15 homes. And it's absolutely wonderful, but there's no way, if it's contaminated, that we will allow that site to go ahead for our people. So Simon's actually written to the council and said that, you know, we agree in principle, but we need further investigation. So apart from that, there were 16 other sites which they said was not viable. But Brian, again, has been researching all these sites to find out what he can. And it seems there is one site that is suitable. So we will be working on that one site. Of course, we will not condemn the site that's proposed at the moment. We can't, because if we condemn that and say we don't want it now, then they will wash our hands and say we've done our duty. So we have to, we're going along with the council, going along with the residents. And I must say that the residents, after the presentation that we did, they changed their mind about gypsies and travellers, and they're more concerned now with the health of gypsies and travellers, and they shouldn't be on there, which is wonderful, you know, which leads us to the road shows. Can you move it on? I can. Yeah. So what we're doing in with Danny Tamblin and Sophie Sajek of BCP Council, we've decided that we will do some road shows in collaboration with them, and those road shows will go to all the places where on the road travellers visit. We've got a place called Creekmore Park and Ride. It's ideal for a transit site, and I keep badgering them that this transit site, a well-run transit site, can save them a lot of money. They've only got one permanent site in the BCP area. It's not enough that there is a long waiting list of that site. It's a very nice site. In fact, Simon Rushton said it was one of the nicest he'd seen, council-owned sites he'd seen. So we would like another site like that, but unfortunately we won't be having it at Branksome Triangle. But this is what we want to do. We want to do these road shows and take it to all the places, as I say, Creekmore Park and Ride, where travellers have been going for years and years and years, who unfortunately 2 years ago I met a young man on there and his family. He said, I've been coming here for years, Aunt Bet. He said, and now they're telling me, I said, I've only been here 5 minutes. It's got to go on. Went to another place in Wimborne, and then he's got the town council banging on his window with a mobile phone, you've got to go, and he had to go. And they were no problem whatsoever. So now I'm going to pass you over to Abby again.
So, as we've been going through this project, things have kind of snowballed, and we've been approached by different people who want to work with us on various different things, but to do with this project. And one of them was Chief Inspector, Chief Officer Richard Jeffries. Chief Inspector Richard Jeffries. Did you want to speak on him first?
Yes, why he came to us is actually because, unfortunately, when the new law first came out and everyone was adhering to the law and doing what the council said, they've got to go. And he contacted me because he'd had to evict a group of travellers and who had come into the area. They were booked into a campsite. As soon as they saw twin wheels and vans, etc., that's it, they had to go. He said they were the nicest lot of travellers. He didn't feel it was right evicting them, but he had to. And he said when they left, he said that everything was fine. Next thing in the media, they left a mattress, they left all this rubbish, it was everywhere. Now, he rang me personally to say, he said when he was there when the last trailer pulled out, and he said, I can assure you there were a few bags of rubbish all tied up, ready for the council to pick them up, and there was no mattress there. So when I do speeches and when I go into places and residents and people who are against gypsies and travellers, I use that. As soon as they talk about rubbish, I use that, and he's happy for us to use that. So, since then, we have now...
Yes, Richard Jeffries has been in touch with us and would like us to join a scrutiny panel. And actually, we would like to hear some feedback from you about what you think about this, but we think it's a good thing. They have approached us because they want to work with us with body cam footage. So, obviously, we know body cams are used nationally now. What they want to do is to try and create a project with us where we can view the body cam footage to identify good and bad practice, and alongside that also they will then be learning what things are cultural. We always use the same thing of people thinking that people are shouting when they're actually just talking to their families, and they think that that's aggression, and it's not. And so they want to be able to do that so that they can train the police, because he's recognised, and obviously Danny Tamblin as well, that it could be better. And he also said to us, he said, last year there were 13 encampments. Why do you think the number's so low? And we came up with a few different ideas. And he said, it's because we're not writing it down. We're not capturing it. And he said, and we should be. We agree with that because we know that data means you can evidence with data. So we need to know who's coming in. We need to know what's happening and how it's going. So, yes, my question is what you think about us working with the police on the body cam footage issue.
Go first here.
Yeah, we're asking the questions first.
We're asking, yeah.
It's a good way round of doing it. I think work with the police, and I understand that most police don't understand that we're quite animated people. So we use our hands, we might be a bit louder. You're outdoors, you have to be the loudest to be heard. Doesn't mean aggressive, but I think body-worn cameras
you're going to come up against a lot. I mean, with the facial recognition, there's a lot of charities working against that. Personally, if I was roadside or any interaction with the police and they had body worn cameras, I'm going to cover my face and walk away. I'm not going to interact. That's personally, because there's a mistrust in the police. We don't know what's going to do with this data. And if you get one bad police person, male or female, whoever, they can use that against you. And there's many police in the force. There might be some good and there's some bad. It's a world, in the society we're in, there's good and bad in all walks of life. I think this would be used as a target towards gypsies and travellers. It's more of a denigrate than a positive. That's my personal opinion. I would not want to touch it with a barge pole.
Okay. I understand that. Yeah. I do understand that, and we all feel that way. The thing is, they are going to be using them, and we want your thoughts so that we can take this back to them. But they are going to be using them, but we are going to get the privilege of actually seeing. And I think we can judge, you know, like most of us in here can judge the character of the policeman and their actions. But it's very interesting to hear this. Go on, carry on. Who's next?
Cheers. Hi. Really good question, and I get what you're saying, Ivy. In Cheshire and Merseyside Police, they've used body worns for a really long time now.
Would you be able to speak a little bit louder into the microphone?
Sorry. Is that better, Betty?
Working, I'm afraid.
So, no, I'm not often told I'm not loud enough, I have to say. I'm making a note of the date. I work Cheshire and Merseyside, as you know, particularly. Cheshire and Merseyside Police have for a very long time used body-worn cameras. I'm on scrutiny panels in both Merseyside and Cheshire Police. What I find is they're going to use them anyway. What you can do is communicate back to the community if you're on those scrutiny panels exactly how they're being used. You can challenge the police. There's something that Cheshire Police use called Go Wisely, and it's a checklist that we use. If they don't give their collar number, the station they're from, then their officer name, they don't do all of those things in the right order, you have a direct challenge back to the officers that if they switch the cameras off for any reason or they cover it with their lapel, which we know that has happened, any of those things, or they make their jackets move so that nobody can hear what's going on, you've got a direct challenge back to why that's happening. And you get to scrutinise both gypsy and traveller experiences and other people's experiences within that setting, so you can compare and contrast what's going on for everybody. I would say do it, as long as you're communicating and really honest with your communities, why you're doing it and how you're doing it, and what, because there's a learning thing both ways. The police are going to use these cameras. If they're going to use them, people need to understand why, that it is actually everybody, that it is actually a protection for people. You know, it's not just going to be community phones being used to measure the police's actions. The police are measuring their actions. And if it's done properly, then actually we've got a really good way of challenging them to make it proper and every interaction, a positive interaction with the communities that we work with. So that would be and it gives you that power in that space to actually challenge that.
Thank you. Thank you,
Next one.
So I think it's a really good idea as well. In West Yorkshire, the police use body-worn cameras, and we have a really good connection at Leedsgate with the Police and Crime Commissioner. So I think that would be a really good way to receive data back. It's not just from hate crime, it's from all other sorts of things. It could be stopped on the street, it could be a car pulled over. It's all different ways of getting that data back. So I think it's a really, really good idea.
Who's next?
Thank you.
Just hold it. It's going round.
Yeah, just to give a positive story about the body camera. Going back to the family over the Ashbourne thing, when they went on the land, it was awful. A load of people came out of the houses on the Sunday, and they came down to the gate, and luckily it was caught on a policeman's body camera that this woman put her foot down on the accelerator brake and nearly knocked over a friend of mine. She went straight for her with the car. And there were two teenage boys that pushed her out the way. These two boys had come down to support, very brave boys. I'll give a clap out to them. There was only about 15 and 16. And they'd come down in support of the family against all these people that was there. And all that was caught on the camera. So the police was able to charge you.
We don't like it, but it seems like we've got to go with it. Yeah.
I work across West Midlands and Warwickshire, and in Warwickshire the police have a traveller liaison officer, and we do work not just with the police but the councils. And the good thing about Warwickshire is we have big meetings where everyone's involved, and there's even GRT representatives in that. But then when you move into the West Midlands, they were putting their cameras off whenever there was incidents, not just with us, because I'm on a panel that deals with this, not just with us, but with the black community. So now we've got it that the police have to put their camera on before they get out their motor. They're not allowed to switch it on once they've got the handcuffs on, because that's what a lot of the police officers in the West Midlands were doing. But now that's not happening. The camera has to be switched on before they get out the motor.
Somebody, we've got us. Yeah, thank you, Adeline. That's brilliant.
Actually, it's not a question to you, Betty, it's a question to the group. As you know, we was introduced, we're writing the report from today, and if you've got any comments that you would like, because we, apart from capturing what the presenters are saying, we're here to capture what the community want to say. So if you have anything that you want to into this report, please come and speak to Hannah and I, and we can add it to the report.
You've got nothing to hide with the camera.
And one here and then one there, and then we'll...
Violet from York Travellers Trust. I just have a couple of, I just have a couple of things. One, I'm completely with Wynne on this, and I think it is coming in, so we might as well use it. But I have a couple of concerns. One, how do you get past, maybe it's not an issue down in Dorset, but it definitely is in York. How do you get past the police grass?
Get past?
Sorry, could you speak?
Being the police grass.
Yeah.
How do you get past that when it's raised? What sort of are you putting in place within Kushti Bok to avoid that? Because we deliver training to the new recruits and we're always concerned that it's going to come back, or you're grassing to the police.
So what she's saying is, what things are you putting in place so that the community don't think that Kushti Bok are like grassing up on them as a charity and working with the police against them, essentially?
Yeah, it's something we had in Doncaster, because I worked in Doncaster before this. And just another comment, how are the police going to identify which footage to give to you?
This is all.
I'm with you on that one, Violet. Definitely, yeah. Are they going to give us all of them, or are they just going to cherry pick? Yeah, I'm really with you on that one. Also,
it's not just that. How are they going to identify which is the travellers and which isn't if they don't? So if a person's being interviewed on the street, I'm not going to go, "Oh yeah, I'm a gypsy." Who's going to be doing that work?
I know most of the Dorset travellers. I think we can pick them out. Definitely.
And also it's for encampments. It's for the body cam footage from the encampment approach.
When we do it in the West Midlands, there's numbers. So you pick random numbers and that's the footage you get to see.
Right.
Do you understand what I'm saying? You can't let them pick it. Yeah, because what's the point? They'll just pick all the good ones that they've done. So we do the ones where we pick it. So there's a panel of us. It's not just GRT. There's black people, there's Asian people. There's a big group of us. And we pick which number we want, and that's the footage we get to see.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Brilliant. Yeah. And we will be working. We will be working to let the gypsy and traveller population in Dorset and nearby about the CAM. We do lots of events in the town. We do lots of information events. So that will be coming up at all of those events, and also the road shows that will be coming up, because there won't be just the residents there. There will be, don't forget, some of the residents will be gypsies and travellers. Thank you.
So one experience I had supporting a family where someone in the family had been arrested, and when it got to court, he's defending himself, and the key evidence that convicted him in the end was body camera footage I couldn't see it, but I could hear everything of it in court. But he didn't know that this was going to be used, and he hadn't been given access to see it first. And he was completely shocked emotionally because he was quite distressed. He was woken in the middle of the night by people banging on the door, 4 a.m., pulling him out, and he reacted as you would. And all of this is played out in the court, and it looks one way, and he hadn't seen it first. So I think it's being very careful about rights and responsibilities.
Yeah. This lady here, she's had her hand up quite a long time. Oh, go on, carry on. Okay.
I'll come from the other side of this. I was a serving police officer for 31 years. Now, the webcam or body cam, whatever you want to call it, it will be used, and it will always be used now to collect evidence under Article 21. Now, that evidence is only there to be used in cases where you're taking something to court that's not widely used. But you have the right under the Freedom of Information to request any of that body cam footage. It's all downloaded off the body cam whenever they get back to the station. So it is held on a hard disk. And you, if you know the day, they'll hold it indefinitely if it goes on the hard disk. It's kept.
Forever.
So you can get on that and you can ask for that. If you know the times, the dates, you can ask for that footage, and especially if you know the officers. But before an officer is using it, he should inform you that it's been switched on. You are now being on the webcam here. So you should know about it. And in the case of this one where he had never seen it before, didn't know, that's a very poor solicitor he had. But he has the right to ask for full disclosure of all stuff that's going to be used against him. And at any stage in the court proceedings, if they produce something he hasn't seen, he has a right to stop the court and say he needs an adjournment until he assesses this. You should have got a solicitor, appealed it, and went for the. But I say, as a police officer, it is used. Maybe not in my time, widely used, and I know there's 1,000,001 ways you can avoid using it. But if you're using it as a police officer, and somebody does object to it, unless you're recording evidence of an offence or something that's happening, but in this day and age, somebody's going to have it on their phone anyhow. There's 1,000,001 phones come out as soon as a police officer arrives on the street. So a webcam, the body footage, is just giving another perspective of it. But you should be able to see it before it's used against you.
Thank you. I'm aware of the time, and yeah.
Hello.
Can this lady be the last one?
Sorry, I'll be very quick then.
Yeah.
I'm Nancy from London Gypsies and Travellers. So for these risks that will affect you in case you might have to testify in court if there is an incident, maybe you want to protect yourself against that kind of use that would not conform with your plans to be advocates for the travellers. You could put that in the terms of your agreement with the police.
Can you say that again?
So
Sorry.
when you have an agreement with the police that you will be on the scrutiny panel, you can set your terms, and then if they don't agree to that, that's when you can make the decision that they've crossed the red line. So for instance, you might want to say, we will not testify in court on the basis of this footage. We are doing it purely as an advisory, in an advisory capacity. And if they don't agree to that, you just say, no, well, it's off the table then. We would rather use freedom of information. We would rather use, independent footage and advise on that basis.
Perfect.
So maybe you set the red lines for yourselves first before you answer the police.
That's a great idea.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
What I wanted to do is, I thought that we wouldn't take this long. I just wanted to introduce our first advocacy worker for Kushti Bok, who is actually employed directly by Citizens Advice, just to give you 2 minutes of what her role is and what she does and how it's freeing Kushti Bok up. Quick. Oh, you're going to do it that way? Can everybody hear?
It is a wonderful job. The lady that I'm working with
is a Romanian lady, and she was actually brought up with Roma in Romania. She said probably back in time she is relation. The good thing is that I get the experience of the Citizens Advice, where she was a volunteer before. But me being a Romani traveller, I sort of can talk to people. Just a very small case. I spoke to her last night, and she said she had an older gentleman come into the Citizens Advice in Gillingham and Dorset, and she said he was very deaf, clearly a traveller, but she was trying to explain to him exactly what her role is, and when she actually got it through to him, she said, she was nearly crying last night on the phone. She said he grabbed hold of my hand and said, "Thank you so much. Someone actually who understands what," and she said he was nearly crying because just people, because the problem is, and what I found in my life, is people using big words, trying to explain things, and we don't get it. I'm afraid I've been educated, and still the big words do not process in my head. I can't do it. And what I found with a lot of the people that I've seen is the way to explain it in a way that they understand. So, but it's also helping them out. I'm sorry, I'm going over time. There was the Citizens Advice had some money, and it was for people who were not on mainline gas. So it actually went out to the travellers, but the travellers didn't know about it. I actually went to one site, and I was there for 4 hours. They wouldn't let me leave until everybody had actually come home from work to sign them up, but they wouldn't have known about it if it wasn't for me. So, but we're doing good, and hopefully other Citizens Advices will roll it out over time, because they know that we are people that need help, but we don't understand that Citizens Advice is actually a charity. It's not there as government to know everything else. They're not judgmental. So, any questions you can ask me later. Okay.
A big thanks there to Betty and Abby, and of course to Karen there. And now the final presentation before lunch is with Peter Wilkinson from the Armagh Roma and Traveller Support, ARTS. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Peter Wilkinson.
Right, I know it's nearly dinner time, so I'll keep it very short. We are a very small organisation in Northern Ireland. We're based in Armagh. There are only 5 of us working in it. We would cover family support mainly. Now, we run projects, etc., and it has been running for about 30 years and was always known as Armagh Traveller Support Group, though it was housed in one of the trust buildings, which used to be the mental health hospital, which in itself had that stigma that nobody wanted to come to it. So about 8 years ago, 7 years ago, they decided they had to move out. So they moved out, and we've got our own premises, etc. And as I've said, I was a serving police officer in Armagh for 31 years. So the idea of me being the chairman of a traveller support group, you can understand that there may have been some difficulties there. A lot of the travellers I knew from previous experience. So, but they seem to have grasped onto it okay, the fact that maybe any warrants or summonses or anything now, I might be of some benefit to them. So we do start off with housing, health, criminal justice, education. We have a go at it all, including their benefits, etc., that they want to do. We run projects such as St. Bridget's Day, which is a big hit, especially with the travellers. But I've noticed when I'm here, the one word everybody's using is that word gypsy. And you see, if you use that in Northern Ireland, the police will be out with you and you'll be in as a racist by the end of the day. You can't use that word at all in Northern Ireland for some reason. It used to be everyone was known as gypsies, and now you can't use it. Because when I was coming in yesterday over towards the hotel, I noticed something that I haven't seen in 50 years, which was a gentleman leading his horse The children in the wagon walking down the middle of the main road, you would not see one in Northern Ireland now. There are 4 halt sites, as we would call them. 2 of them are pretty similar to what the local council would put skips in for dumping, and there's 2 or 3 other ones around. A couple of decent ones, but most of them aren't. But Armagh travellers themselves are all mainly settled people, and their idea of a caravan is a 40-foot silver line, which you can sleep 17 people in, and if you can't give me that and it's shining, I don't want to know. So we do St Bridget's Day. About 4 or 5 years ago, just before COVID started, we were running a drop-in centre to help, because Roma started arriving in Armagh for some reason. Now, COVID hit, everywhere closed, and because they'd met us, they started coming to us a few at a time. We now have over 7,000 coming in the year to us. It is a settlement area. There's 3 settlement areas in Northern Ireland: Belfast, Ballymena and Armagh, but that's due to the work. Factories, etc. around there, so they come. Our Roma population now don't read and write at all in our language, in their language. And we bumped into Lynne last year when she came over to our event in the Mall, and as I'm sure you all know, she's a very hard lady to say no to when she asks you to do something. So she got talking with us, and then we decided to do the mentoring. Now, we had 3 young girls who used to help out with us. We run English classes, after schools classes, to try and help, because there's a lot of racism and discrimination in the schools. The Roma children especially are being segregated at the minute and left to their own devices instead of being taught. Now, they do get all this extra money from the government for each child that comes into their school, some of them 100, 200,000 into the school, and yet at the end of 2 or 3 years, that child can't read and write yet. They're being put in different classrooms, all segregated together, and left with headphones or looking out the window. Then they don't come to school. Then the truant officer comes out, wanting to know why they're not at school, but there's no point in them going to school. They can sit at home and watch TV. But we try to run the after-school programs and that's where, when Lynne said about the mentoring, she said, take on one. We had 3 young girls who were 15 at the time, coming 16, and she did say that I should bring them here today, but I'm a grown man and these are 3 young girls at 17, and there's no way in God's earth am I coming over here on my own with 3 young girls. We took them on, and it's like you couldn't pick your favourite child, so we had to take all 3 on. Now, these children, they weren't given the opportunity at the school to be put through to do GCSEs or anything. They were just pushed off to do whatever wee bit of work they could do, and that would be it. Leave school, go and do what they want to do, only for the fact we have a couple of plants in some of the schools who are teachers, who feed back and work with us about what's actually happening in the schools. So they pushed these children and they got them enrolled on courses which the headmisters and things didn't know about. So they're actually pushed forward till they did get some qualifications. Then we got them enrolled in the local tech, and the 3 of them, we took them on to do courses. Now, 2 of them have finished their courses there recently, and I am pretty sure now both of them, one in business, one in childcare, I'm pretty sure they'll get their results now, and I'm sure they'll be favourable for them to go on ahead and do something else. The other one now did leave in April, but she's away to get married. She went back to Bulgaria, and she did phone me and apologised for the fact that she'd gone to Bulgaria and that she feels she's let us down. And I said, well, it's there. You've done it nearly all, so I'm hoping she comes back for 6 weeks in September. The tech are willing to allow her to resit. She had only the 6 weeks left to do, and if she gets her beauty therapy course and thing, she'll have that under her belt, which she sees as a good step into the future. We run like an advocacy service with them, and it takes in everything. We have some cases running at the minute. We have actually a murder case going with a traveller child, and there's a big thing where it's happening, but I'm sure you can all see that. We can't do much about it because the statutory bodies have their own ideas about what they have to do. This was
This was a traveller child. Both parents were travellers, split up. They were living with the mother. The mother got a new man on board. Social services said, no, can't have him anywhere near those children, obviously with his track record. Yet he was left alone with them and murdered one of them. Now, the other child has been taken into care, which is understandable, but that's 3 years, and we're still fighting now to try and let the father's aunt adopt that child. That child's now raised in a different religion household. They're raised in a non-traveller culture, and yet social services want to adopt that child into another family. So that is ongoing at the minute. The fact the case is in court, he's pleaded guilty to murder and the mother is getting done for neglect. We have it, and with social services we have one of the Roma families which is the same, running along the same lines, and they want to adopt these two children. And there's no evidence there, to support what they're doing. Yet we've had the Quality Commission, Human Rights on. We're now in touch with the Bulgarian Embassy to see about what we can do. This family hasn't even got EU settlement. So the mother and father are here with no rights. And the two children, although they're born here, have no rights either because of no settlement status. So I've asked social services how they think they're going to adopt two children who are illegally in this country. So we have to see what the Bulgarian Embassy comes out with that one. As I say, the three young girls we're mentoring, we'll have to relook at it this year. It's a great project. These girls will have finished with us now because they are going back to Bulgaria to do different bits and pieces. Money-wise, there's a slight if you were an adult and had responsibilities, these are three young girls and the money's too much. It's leading them into a false sense of what life is about, because now they're going out to try and get themselves a job, and at 17 they've been offered £6, £7 an hour, and they're going, not a hope. I'm not working for that. So it's leading them in, it's trying to build them up into knowing what life's about and what actually, that there's a responsibility out there for what you need to do. They have come on very well, and we will do it, but we have a young traveller woman I think wants to come on next year on board with it. So we will continue it on for the next year with however many we can take on. Now, we also did the digital inclusion, which was great. We run the after schools project, and I'm sure you know all kids, like I see the two at the back, is nothing like a mobile phone or a tablet to keep them amused. You can teach them whatever you want, standing up in front of them and show them a book and this and that, but give them a tablet and you'll get them engrossed for hours on end. We have 16 young kids at the minute, all primary school kids, who come every Friday to do, we'll change it to Wednesday next year, I think, because their homework needs done for a Friday and there's no one in the school to help them. And as you understand, like, they're very intelligent kids. They can speak 6 languages. They can't write a word, not even in their own language. And we're in the privileged position that 3 of the girls that we actually employ, there's 2 Bulgarians and the other one is Lithuanian Russian, and they speak Polish and a few other different languages. So it cuts down our expenses instead of having to hire an interpreter £30 an hour. So, we can fit all this in and run all these classes, do these projects, and it costs us nothing. Now, where we met Lynne last year, we're running this year again, the cultural awareness training thing, but it's going to be a big culture event in the middle of Armagh on the Mall on the 19th of July this year. We have the traveller caravan comes with the old tents, and the tinsmith and things come and they put on their display for it as well. We'll have the Roma dancing and traditional costumes, though this year we have 8 other nationalities, including Lithuanian, Russian, Ukrainian, Nigerian, actually Zimbabwean, all wanting to come on board to sort of demonstrate their nationality and what they see, because they too see themselves as newcomers. And although maybe they have a better education from some of the places that they're coming from and they're on a better level, they see themselves as a newcomer and isolated as well, which means they can all get in touch with each other and form those bonds. Now, Northern Ireland's always green and orange. It always has been. But now we've got this difference. We've got black, we've got brown, You know, we have white, with every colour under the sun now on it, and every nationality. And it's getting away from the fact that it's just green and orange now, and people are trying to blend in. People give us funding and say, need to do this project, need to do that project. But you can't just do a project for a traveller, or you can't do a project for Roma. As we go out to the schools and we deliver healthy minds and healthy hearts projects and all for them, but you have to include the whole class, otherwise you're just pointing and saying, you, one use two and we'll do it with you, and then the other kids are doing it for them. You have to include them in the community. They're part of the community. And until you actually include them in the community, you're just segregating them. You're doing what society's been trying to do to them for years, and you're helping. So when you include them in the community and you include them in that, they actually learn better. A lot of the ones that come to some of our wee projects and things, the locals want to come to it because they've now made friends. And they've made friends with traveller kids, they've made friends with Roma kids, Nigerian kids, whatever. And there doesn't seem to be that problem, that they're all together and they're all just friends playing. The adults are the problem. The children seem to be bringing it on in hopefully, a new era where they'll not have this segregation, they'll not have this racism. But still at the minute, there still is that, especially in our schools. Several of the schools, especially, there is a lot of racism, there's a lot of discrimination. As I say, we have the thematic groups running. We have a traveller thematic group running in Stormont, and now we've pushed and we have a thematic group running for the Roma. Though how good they're going to be, a lot of them are talking shops, like most things are. We do a lot of talking with ministers and this and that. We had a meeting set up with the Education Minister to discuss Roma and travellers, etc. But that sort of went by the wayside when he found out what we want to actually discuss with him. It then changed from the education problem, segregation, one thing and another, to he decided he wanted to talk about childcare vouchers instead, which I said, well, that's probably a good vote winner, but it ain't going to help us in the slightest. None of our families will be bothering with your vouchers. None of them are at that stage where they need a childcare voucher. We need to teach them some education first. So he withdrew from it and left it. So we sent him an email, and then they asked him to send on the email. So I said, I'll send you a better one. So you can send them both on to him. So we wait to hear from him. There's a lot of work to be done yet with with travellers and everything. As I say, as coming from my background, I have known a lot of the travellers for many, many years. I've been in their families, I've been in their houses. We set up a Safe Place initiative, which is to deal with domestic violence, to deal with abused children, to do with social services and families who have split up, separated, because a lot of the travellers and the Roma thing had said to us, when they take our children, they send us to this place in social services, and it's a square room with a table, and there's somebody up there on a wee camera watching you. You can't move. So we have set up the Safe Place initiative, and instead of, the thing that we found was they came to us to speak to us and they said, nobody helps us after this. If I want to report something to the police, we have, do you have Annie here? No. It's where you can go to a chemist or whatever and you can just say Annie and they'll give you a phone and you can report domestic violence or whatever. But they said, you stand there then for 2 hours and you wait till the police come. Then they'll take you to a police station. Then they arrange 2 days or 3 days later or whatever to go and see Women's Aid. Then you have to go see social services in a week after that. And they said, well, how do we get from reporting it when someone up the courage to do this? It's 5 weeks down the line. How do we get back and forward and all? You know, we're left on our own with this. So the Safe Place was set up that you could bring yourself and your children and come and we'll bring these people to you. So you can come to us, you can tell your other half you're getting benefits, and there's not a question about it. You're coming to fill in forms and he never answers. That's as far as he knows, that's what you're doing. So they come to us, and we've done a few now. We did a cross-border one where we had to get the guards in the south to go and remove a young traveller and her daughter and remove her and bring her to the border to hand her over to the PSNI and give her to us. Now that ended up with a fight with The Hague and the High Court in relation to residency orders, because although the child was born in Northern Ireland, had a UK citizenship, the child was only 9 months old and had lived 8.5 months in the south. So the judge had no option, but it's black and white to him. You go back down south and you take your mother with you and you fight it down there. But we managed to argue it and fight it and fritter about with it for about 10 months. And then when we went back to the court, would you believe it, the child had then resided longer in the north than they had in the south. So the residency order was remain in the north and you can fight it up there. So she's doing very well with that. We have had some travellers work with us, though the north seems to be slightly different from over here with our travellers. It's very hard to find a traveller that will stand up as an advocate in the north. They don't push their children, don't want them to be up there. They're afraid to stand up in front of the other travellers and put a voice forward, because they're sort of looked on as, who do you think you are? You know, you're not better than me. And they're very wary of each other. They are like clans. We are small, the country, like, so depending on where you go, you have a McDonough, that's the family name in Kyle. You have the Mohans, that's the family name. So if you mention your surname, people automatically know which part of the country you're from. And then people gossip and talk. And they don't want to, when they come to us, even that if there's a traveller working with us, they don't want to come in if she's on. I'll come in tomorrow if she's not here. I don't want her knowing my business. I don't mind you knowing, don't want her knowing. Will she see any of my forms? So there's a fine line about where you push them, where you don't push them. The same with these young girls that we're mentoring. I mean, it would be great if they did go on and get all their qualifications, but there's a fine line in what we want for them and what their own culture and their own heritage and thing tells them to do. If that's their calling and that's their family and that's what they want to do, to get married at 18 and go down that line, well, who am I to tell them they can't? I can't force what I think they should be doing. But all we can do with Moving for Change is Helping All is give them that extra year or that 2 years to let them see what is out there. And maybe, just maybe one or two of them, and then at least they'll get it backing, and they'll maybe have somewhere to go in the future with it. So thank you very much for your time. Thank you.
I hope you've all enjoyed this morning. I don't know about you, but for me, I feel like I've got people that I want to speak to. I've got things that I've found in common. I want to ask Ivy and the team to get the Archbishop of York to talk to York Travellers Trust, please, because he's ignoring us. I want to know about how you got how you got CAB to fund you. It's something we've been asking for forever, and they keep telling us it's not possible. So I want to have a chat to you. Peter, the stuff you were talking about pushing people to the right point and not pushing too far and not putting expectations on them, you know, and just taking the small wins. There's a person in this room, I'm not going to point them out. I used to be their youth worker many, many years ago, and I spent a lot of time and effort getting them into alternative provision education. We spent a lot of money, not when I was York or somewhere else. And this person went and got themselves married at a very young age, and I remember thinking, I'm going to kill her. I'm going to kill her. And today she's a youth worker. So, you know, them small little nuggets, they grow and they grow and they grow. And I just want to quickly talk about how our mentee, we've got a mentee at York Travellers Trust. She's a young gypsy woman who came to us because her son was using our basic skills work and our Prince's Trust work. At the time she started coming in to see what we were up to, she was working in a kitchen, and that's all she'd ever done. She'd worked in a kitchen, a very powerful voiced young woman with a lot to say for herself, a lot of get up and go in a kitchen. So the MfC money was announced for the mentees, and we grabbed it with both hands. And Abigail, my second in command in the back, along with our mentee, worked with the University of York, the York City Council, to produce this amazing report that's available on our website. You can't have this copy because our mentee's name is spelt wrong, but it's on our website and it's correct. If I can just ask that we all come back at 1:30 for Darren Ward's workshop, please, or as near as possible as you can get. I know we're into lunchtime, but Doug is going to motion to the doors of where we need to be for lunch.
Can I just speak first of all? As you probably know, I'm not ashamed to speak my mind. But I'd just like to contradict you because I'm now Bradford team leader.
Sorry. See, small acorns. Thank you. Do the presenters mind speaking to the consultants? No, through lunch, thank you.
It's going to be a slightly more interactive session. It's a workshop, as well as a presentation from the Modern Nomad project. Now, Darren Ward, who's leading the Modern Nomad, it says here, Darren and members of the project steering group. Is it just you?
Today, yes.
It is just, but there will be audience participation. So just be ready. Anyway, I'll pass you over to Darren here. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Hello, everyone. So yeah, it's myself and Ivy here today representing the group. So we had a presentation, I think it was about a year and a half ago now, where we introduced the theme of appropriate forms of dwelling, which is just a really nice way of saying accommodation, but different types of accommodation, because when people think of accommodation, they usually think of bricks and mortar, which isn't always the case, especially relating to the GRT culture. So off the back of last year, we formed a cluster group who Ivy is also a part of, and we tried to come up with I suppose topics that were key to issues and desires for better accommodation for GRT people, which we turned into a community questionnaire, and that went live in February, which we're going to actually go through today, which is why Doug was just saying there that it's an interactive session. So I'm hoping it doesn't feel too much like work and you have a bit of fun in the meantime. Within the questionnaire, it's broken into 3 key topics or themes: community, culture and heritage, connectivity and land use, and environment. Within those themes, we're asking you to pick 5 desires and 5 concerns surrounding GRT accommodation as an almost lessons learned exercise, and that we can use and go away to produce community-driven design principles, which will be freely distributed to local authorities, third parties, councillors, whoever you want. And it's in the group's hopes and ambitions that it'll be taken as a starting point from the community who is positively and proactively trying to engage with better places to live and how we think and feel it should be. And going from there, it might be turned into actual places to live that are more site-specific across the UK, hopefully. So yeah, I've just kind of recapped what I've just said there. I myself, I'm an Irish traveller, I forgot to mention, and I'm also an architect. So I feel like it's important to me, and it's important to kind of represent and be some sort of connection between the two. This diagram kind of represents what I've just said again, and how it will be moved forward into that design-driven kind of document that could hopefully become many more things. So what I'm going to ask you to do now, as a part of the interactive exercise, I've got 3 group timekeepers, Ivy, I'm trying to find you, Abeline, Ailey, sorry about that, Josie, and they're going to kind of try and keep you on track. If you could spend about 15 minutes on each topic, I know it says 25 up there, we'll try and keep it as tight as possible. And then once we kind of address those themes, we can all kind of surround the table at the top here and look at the visual prompts, images, to talk about good and bad qualities of places to live and what we can learn from it, hopefully. So the 3 groups I was thinking was the 3 tables just onto the left here will be one group, the 2 middle tables will be another group, and the tables to the right here will be another group. So if we can kind of gather around, and I'll start distributing some questionnaires. Hi everyone. I think we're kind of drawing closer to the time because of time. I appreciate that it wasn't the simplest, and that's my fault. But the good news is there is an online version, and I will be sending out a simplified PDF version or Word document for people to use and distribute. So the online survey will be live for the whole month of June for GRT History Month. And as an additional kind of option on the surveys, Ivy Manning has kindly offered to add her number for people that have literacy issues, so it can be read to them and she can help fill them in. So, I mean, the purpose of today is to take away all these really great conversations you've been having to put into a community-driven design document that can be used anywhere in the UK, hopefully. So it's about the high-level kind of questions of how we should live, what that should look like, and basically just having that conversation and directing the conversation. Because if we present our position as a community, then typically or ideally we'd get a positive response from local authorities and beyond that. But I'd like to thank you all for your time, and again, thank you for doing the exercises, because I know it was a bit of a task. So I hope we can move forward. Ivy, yes.
This document, this document is, I have spoken to local authorities and they're willing to adopt it, to put it in with their local plan. So Enfield are currently awaiting this document, and I've met with the construction guys that are looking at several sites, and they're not proceeding until they get some clear concrete site design. So that's positive.
That's great news. Just also to kind of add to that, this is about visions for sites or types of accommodation. There won't be a template per se. It'll be more about when you approach a site, how would you do that from the community's vision and what that looks like. And it's a starting point for the likes of Enfield and other places where they can say, we can facilitate or we can help do 6 of these 10 things locally. Other things are a bit more difficult because of the local context and planning policy, but it's a good place to start in, because if you can address 50% of our concerns, surely that's a positive over our current situation. So, yeah, more to come.
Hello. So I have a question for you and for everybody, really, and it's about thinking forward to when the weather is going to get hotter in the summer, and I know there's already been some advice distributed about how to get through a heat wave, for instance. But if there are any thoughts within the design of sites on how to cool it down, and also maybe to be more environmentally conscious, what kind of design elements are you looking at for those two aims?
So that's a really good point, very good point. And that is quite a site-specific thing. So when you're looking at a site, you consider things like orientation, plot sizes, distance of plot sizes, but not even just caravans, for houses as well, same thing. So there's lots of different ways you can kind of prevent heat from coming into a building to help overheating. So it's design strategies once you know what your design brief is. So that's quite a specific detail. Also landscaping. Landscaping really improves an environmental strategy in terms of cooling and shading. So it's all of these things considered. That is a part of a site design. But again, that's a really specific site design, because you can't say that on this site we need 30% of these kind of trees, the structures need this type of kind of overhang to prevent kind of overheating. You can't say that until you know the orientation of the site. So they're all very specific things, but all very important things. And that is kind of an add-on to what this document is presenting to do, because you can't design those scenarios until people or kind of governing bodies take you seriously enough to consider a site or a place to design for. Because as an architect, I'm a keen believer in context and understanding using the site constraints and how you can kind of benefit from them and make the best place to live. So it's quite specific, but very important.
Hi Darren, I just wanted to add to that point to say that I'm Jay, I'm the research officer at Gypsies and Travellers Wales, and so I can't speak for England or Scotland, but we have a massive amount of funding just going into a new project about environmental impacts on lots of different groups, inclusion groups, so they're really looking at the state of things in Wales at the moment, which is really bad, and if any more sites are going to be built, they will already have this report to work from. So it's not necessarily about individuals and individual sites, but this, you know, this organisation is going to be canvassing the whole of the coast to see where the issues are.
Yeah, that's
so those kind of projects are getting funded.
Yeah,
you just have to.
Which they need to be, because there is a drive toward a greener agenda, which is required for net zero. But it's not just GRT accommodation; it's across the board. It's become incredibly difficult to meet compliance for even housing. It's a new challenge for architects, but it's something that we have to move towards because it's really important, not just specific sites.
Hi. Do you think that Ivy's just said that there are councils and areas that are looking into this, but do you think there'd also areas would be looking into it to upgrade existing sites as well? Or is this just going to be used for new sites?
I believe it should be both. I think the problem with retrofitting is it's not as incentivized, but as a part of this greener agenda, it makes far more sense to upgrade existing sites because you're using far less material. Yeah. So as a part of this exercise, if upgrading sites was something very strongly felt as a part of the community, how would we go about doing that? And should we do more of it? Should we make the places that we already have better? I think that's a short-term, simple, good solution instead of going, we need X amount of sites, but there's nowhere to put them. Well, we have sites, just make them better. So I agree.
Hi, thanks. Debbie from LGT. I'm just interested if there's a way of gathering really good practice examples across the country. For example, we know in London there's one site that was built with solar panels, and so people have solar thermals, so and green roofs. So if you think about environmental, but also examples of really good, where we talked about on this table about the importance of site management if it's the local authority site, and quite often when we're in conversations with councils, they're asking us, well, show us where there's a good model of practice, where let's go and visit. So I think for us it would be really helpful to know where those are across the country.
That'd be really helpful, yeah. I mean, it's something that could be maybe thought of as a part of the document, as a case study kind of attachment. So by all means, if you're aware of good examples, please send them across to myself, Moving for Change, Lynne Tammi, because she's also on the project. Ivy, send them to us. We'll go through them, and once we produce this document as well, it's something that will be shared with the network for community review. So everyone gets to have their say on what the output is. So this isn't the final thing, and we can kind of tweak things that are the best for all of us.
Yeah. So just to say that we've just written environmental sustainability brief, which is on our website, and it talks about price of electricity on sites and how we'd look at getting green energy, more greener energy into sites through solar panels, through maybe wind.
Depends on the site, right? Yeah.
So I think we need to look at that in the future if we're talking about new sites.
But you'll also have to do that as part of a planning application.
Yeah.
It's a requirement. So a lot of the projects I work on, not even a lot, most of them now, depending on the local authority, you have to, at planning stages, put forward an energy assessment of how your development will meet compliance, or how it will basically meet the standards that they've set out. So you've got very specific energy consultants that do this for a job now, because it gets quite technical, because every site's different, as Josie was touching on there, that it could be solar, it could be wind, but there's also other ways of getting energy on site. There's geothermal, which are pumps in the ground. There's also just design mechanisms where you orientate things in a certain way to make sure you don't have to use as much energy long term, which personally I think is a better strategy, but it isn't always possible to do that because it might be a heavily constrained site, so it might have a lot of complications about getting as much on as possible, but it's not possible to do it for the best kind of orientation or placement on site.
I'm all for the local authorities doing up the existing sites because they're the ones that do up all the local authority housing. So they should be responsible for doing up the existing sites. But as someone that's non-authorised encampment, we need more sites. I live in the second largest city in the UK, and you've heard me say this how many times over how many years, and there's still no permanent local authority site. We need sites desperately. There's how many people, disabled people, that are roadside, how many old people that are roadside. And I know yous is doing well by saying we need to do up sites and things like that. Why don't we start where we need sites, whether it be permanent sites or transit sites? And if you want a good example of a usable transit site, Walsall Council has a good one.
Great, okay. Yeah, no, that's a fair point. I mean, I'm not saying we don't need new sites. We definitely do. But the questions that I'm trying to ask and get everyone to think about as a part of the cluster group is, what do those things look like? Because we're trying to debunk a lot of myths around GRT accommodation. If we can present a case where this is a community-driven design principle set saying we think it should be like this because it's culturally appropriate, and we're trying to do this to help you guys help us. So they would use it as a base point to then identify sites, hopefully. That is the ambition. So it's kind of taking the first step without getting sites, because they're not going to allocate sites without knowing too much around it, because it's quite hard to do that. So I personally think that it's a much higher level question before you get specific sites. But I think as a part of the long-term goal, it's driving what is a good place to live in, getting them to identify places to do that. But as a part of the sustainability kind of agenda, you also need to think about upgrading sites, because there's only so much land available in the UK, and that's a reality. So we have to deal with those realities as well. So it's not as black and white.
I just want to agree with what you're saying about doing up sites. I fully get your point, Abeline, that we need more sites, but the sites that we have currently are terrible. I'm just interested in your take on something that we're pushing for in York. So York's just defining its greenbelt boundary. That's making it difficult for traveller sites to be built. So we're arguing that we don't want traveller sites. We want culturally appropriate homes for gypsies and travellers. And what we're saying that looks like is little bungalows with really long drives, so people can have their family. And I just wonder if you've thought about implementing stuff like that within this guide and things like that.
I'm glad you raised that. I mean, I completely agree with you. I think those types of models need to be thought about, because the reason why this project is called Appropriate Forms of Dwelling and the Modern Nomad is it isn't just about bricks and mortar. It isn't just about a site. It could be a mixture of things, but it's also understanding the local context, which was touched on about Yorkshire, and what does a GRT house look like? How do you try and capture the culture, but also the flexibility? So I think that's a really, really good idea, and it's something that will come out of this. It's not a one-size-fits-all. It's thinking strategies to be implemented locally, and then someone takes that on board.
Sorry, me again. I've just...
Right.
I was wondering as well, so my family live on 10 acres of land, but their planning permission is for 2 chalets, 2 trailers, which is insane considering they're a family. My brother has 12 grandchildren, as an example. So is there going to be something in this that maybe pushes local authorities to recognise that when a family has that much land, that the sensible thing is to just grant extra pitches quite easily rather than having to go through a whole new planning process?
It's not so much, it's just the way the planning system works, unfortunately.
They don't in Yorkshire.
They'd rather give it to people that are already established than to build new sites.
Yeah.
Yorkshire are uncivilised. Don't put that out on anything.
Well, now that I've got the microwave, I can say what I'm thinking. Could we also implement the fact of what I call environmental racism? There are sites next to not scrapyards. Well, there are sites next to scrapyards, but mainly there are sites next to landfills, which is overrunning the sites with vermin. Then we've also got instances where sites are placed next to dumps, flyovers. Yeah, and
Yeah, no, you're completely right. Site selection is incredibly poor, but that's their way of kind of palming off the issue. But this document, hopefully, will touch on that. We want to touch on that because everyone here knows that you look at the majority of sites, they're not in very nice places to live in terms of its local kind of context. So yeah, I think this document should touch on that, but it's not for me to say in the sense of if it's important to you, it needs to go down on these questionnaires because it's a representation of everyone's input.
Can I just say one thing, Darren? I think we shouldn't lose sight of nomadism, being allowed to stay on the road, if that's what you want to do, because we have an enshrined right to do that.
Yeah.
And sometimes I think when we're pushing for all these sites, sometimes the councils...
You're kind of fixing your own...
They love it because, yeah.
Just building on, I guess, that point about environmental racism, especially if we're talking about local authority sites, there will be lots of other policies and strategies that they should be thinking about when it comes to like older people or children. Yeah, so I think it's about also encouraging local authorities, particularly where they are the landlord, to align their own design with their own strategic documents. Yeah. So if we're going to have a child-friendly city, then it needs to have a playground or whatever. Yeah, no, I agree. You should have some sort of amenity space that people can use. But the other thing to consider as well with planning applications, you will not, usually won't be granted a residential kind of development if the land is to be shown to be contaminated, typically. So they shouldn't be granting that generally. But it begs the question why the sites where they are, because they're surrounded by contamination. Yeah. So it's an old problem that's been inherited, but I mean, what's the solution there? How do you upgrade a site to make it a bit better? How do you make the air cleaner? Landscaping, types of landscaping. And also, well, it's more of a planning context policy thing, but reduce speed zones around the sites. Because they're doing it all over now in the UK for residential areas, you'll see lots of 20-mile-an-hour zones. Why isn't it similar to certain sites? When you're passing a site, you should be driving at a certain speed. Because it's a safety thing too. Yeah. Which is, yeah, it's ridiculous. Yeah. 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 So it's all these things that kind of need to be considered. There's a lot of planning challenges, but it sounds like there's a lot of good people out there from listening to some of the presentations this morning. So with that in mind, and what we're trying to do here as a group, hopefully we come at them with a double-edged sword, that we're thinking about designing nice places to live that locals can get on board with, but we're also challenging the planning context, because I think that is one of the biggest obstacles, and dealing with the planning system and getting things approved and getting them built correctly.
This is just one last question for me, just on that point. Be interested to know people's views. We've got a general election coming up, and I know there's lots of proposals from, well, there are proposals from Labour around, I think they're calling it greyfield sites now, rather than brownfield, grey sites, or around the use of land, and how we need to kind of be ahead of that and engage in those discussions very, very early on. So I'd be interested in what people have to say about that.
They usually, there's a local register for brownfield sites, or grey sites, whatever they're going to be changed into. Yeah, so there's typically a register for it, but it's an open register, so it's looking at sites that are potentially available. But the issue is getting the sites and the funding behind that, and also getting the locals to buy into a site being there. So then it's a question of, if you challenge the myths around traveller sites and how they look and feel externally, internally, and how we understand it ourselves, maybe there's a positive conversation to come out of it. And locals might go, well, actually, I don't mind that site being here because I think it looks quite nice.
I'd done a project with Shelter with Birmingham Fair Housing Campaign, and Mr. Street, he was the combined authority mayor.
Andy Street, yeah.
Yeah, and he said that unless GRT was removed from their report, he wouldn't look at it, and they removed
Well,
GRT.
he shouldn't have been allowed to do that personally.
They
so.
did it, it's done.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you think that if the council-run sites were actually classed as housing rather than not put under the housing, so as in social housing, do you think people would look at it differently?
I think the definition is a challenge, because in planning terms, planners, they typically read things in black and white. It's down to policy. So changing the definition potentially could help, but I think to change the definition, you'd have to change how caravan sites are, which, do we do that? Because culturally, do we want to do that? No. But I think it's more challenging people's notions of traveller sites and how they fit into the area, and maybe thinking behind traveller sites will change, because I don't think, and I don't see how you can change the definition of a caravan into a house. But you touched on another point there, with social housing provision and developers. Maybe it's a case of lobbying for more provision within social housing to be traveller sites that are a part of a development. So instead of saying, local authority, provide a site for travellers on the outskirts, say to developers, as a part of your social housing provision, X amount of % has to be for travellers. And that might actually be more effective across the country, because then you'd build numbers quickly instead of waiting on sites to come up. Yeah. So that could be a strategy.
Just on that comment, in York, we're working with the local authority, we're working against the local authority, let me rephrase that. And one of the things that we're trying to get implemented is 106 money used for housing. So if a developer builds 500 houses, they have to provide money or build 3 pitches, is the idea. Just on another thing that we was talking about, the idea that travellers' sites are built in bad areas. So as a kid that lived on a local authority site very, very young, and as a person that works in York now and has seen the area develop, what I find is the opposite, that traveller sites are built, especially long-standing ones, and then the industrial area is built around them.
Right.
So the site in York...
They're doing it in reverse, basically.
It was a field that was given, and then they've gradually built an industrial estate around them, and it's the same in Bradford, where I grew up. It was housing around us, and then now it's the scrapyard and the dump and things like that. And I think, is there anything that we can do, maybe not put it in line with housing, but get local authorities to recognise when they're allowing developments near sites that they need to take on board that is accommodation. So for example, in York, we've got a brick crushing firm that's allowed to crush bricks that shares a boundary with the site. Dust comes over onto the families, and we've only just got the inspectors to sort of argue that, but within the planning application it wasn't mentioned that there was people living nearby. And we've also now on the same site got a battery, what is it, a solar panel battery
How long
storage.
have they been built?
30 years, 40 years?
I think challenging them will be quite difficult now. You can challenge them.
Oh no, the new stuff is quite recent. So in the last couple of years, the battery storage plant is just being through the planning
I would try and talk
process.
to a local planner or a planner in the private sector, because they won't be local authority affiliated, and take some advice on that. I mean, there should, in the local plan, the zone should have been identified for what it is. So even if it wasn't built, the zoning of that area should have been made clear. So if you guys were allowed to have a site there, and this came after, and there was no awareness of it, I think, there's potential pushback there. Right. So, what's the approach then of how they supply their housing demand? I'd reach out to a planner in the private sector, and I would ask these questions to them, because they would tell you how Yorkshire operates in terms of how they deliver their demand issue, or supply and demand of housing, and it might tease out how they operate, and that might give you a way in to challenge them. If you go to a local authority planner, they will just fob you off, because obviously it's within their interest to not assist conversation. Is that good? Yeah? Well, thank you for your time, guys.
Thank you. Thank you, Darren, and also thank you to all of you. Now, just before we go for our second of the comfort breaks, I believe we have a small announcement from Siobhan. It's okay, it's okay.
I know everybody will be gagging for
Don't
tea
let
and
them know,
cake.
we have time.
Okay, right, yeah. Just a quick announcement. We've managed to get some funding for a national women's group, Women's Voices. So it's really timely now because we've got this election coming up. So if we have a look, if we do some work, this is specifically for women's issues, and it's got to run from June the 1st. We just heard yesterday that we got the money from June the 1st right through to December. If anybody's interested in having a representative on that, just give me an email or give me your email now today, and so we'll scribble it down on a paper, and I can send more information out in the post. One of the main strands of it's going to be education and women's rights. What I say, it's a specifically women's group, Women's Voices. Okay, and it's a national one. Oh, I better say who it's from. Very kindly from European funding, ERGO, the European Roma organisation. Okay.
Now, unless everything's gone horribly wrong, we should have 15 minutes for a comfort break somewhere beyond those doors. Let's see what happens. We're running late, but we're going to finish early. How is that possible, Doug? I'm glad you asked. Well, it's a very, very simple thing. It's all down to the eye right in the sky, because Lynne Tammi, in her infinite wisdom, decided to hold her Q&A at the same time as her original presentation. Oh, multitasking, you see? Something I don't know how to do. So, we're going to have Sarah here for the last presentation, and then presentation. It's our presentation. She's going to talk at you. No. Enjoy the presentation. After which, Christine and Hannah from Consulting Made Easy will doubtless go amongst you in order to ask what you think of the day. And also I'll be lurking about asking the perennial question of GRTHM is, what does family mean to you? But in the meantime, our last session of the day with Sarah Mann. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Doug. Thank you. Sorry, it's the paper on the floor. So I know haven't got a presentation, I haven't got a slideshow, and I'm not even going to talk at you for very long. But I wanted to tell you about a collaborative project that Moving for Change is starting, and that FFT is helping to coordinate, about nomadic life. So Darren, it sort of followed on very much from what Darren was talking about. We started to talk about transit sites or people on the roadside. So the project is to hear the voices of families, nomadic families, people on the roadside, on encampments, on transit sites. So we've done a little bit of background work with a whole series of freedom of information requests to all the local authorities in England, Wales, Scotland and Northern Ireland on the transit or other provision that they might be making in their area. And we had a pretty good response rate, about 90% response rate. So it was a good amount of data, but a very small number of local authorities who actually admitted to doing anything. So we want to do some mapping with that as to what the provision is across the country, and interview some of those site managers. But the other side of it is much more important, which is actually hearing about the experience of families who are using transit sites or on encampments, wanting to travel, their stories, their experience, their aspirations, which is partly where we're again joining in with the Modern Nomad project. So we're very lucky to have Colin Clark and Nicola Hay on board as academics. So Colin Clark's community member, academic, based up in Scotland. He is very excited to be involved in this. He's really, really keen, so keen, but you can't record this, that he said they have to charge through the university. He said, but we'll do double whatever you ask for. I know, that was good. He is a good man, he's a good man. And his colleague, Nicola, as well, who's already done some work. So the idea of having them on board is that we've got some academic rigour in designing the survey work and doing some analysis afterwards. So we've got something that we can publish and say, you know, this is serious work. But also in going to Colin as a community member saying, we want this to be a co-produced process. This isn't something we want as an academic exercise on the shelf. We want you on board because we want to have the people who are going to be delivering the survey, answering the survey, to be co-producing it on the way. So this is kind of the first stage. So Colin and Nicola couldn't be here today because they're doing some big open day at their university. But as this was the first opportunity to come and talk to everybody, I thought I'd grab this while we can. So a couple of thoughts we'd had already was that if we're going to be doing survey or interview work with community members, that it would be best done by community members and organisations who are already going out and talking to people. So we're not creating an extra burden too far, that all the research that people do should be paid for, you know, people should be reimbursed for it, and that all the community members who take part would have some recognition, probably in the form of vouchers, because just that doesn't cause a problem with benefits or anything else like that if people are in that situation, but basically the principle of some financial recognition for everybody involved. So beyond that, I suppose the questions then I've got for you are, would you like to be involved through your organisation and as an individual? And if you would like to be involved, how would you like to be involved? How would you like to shape the work? How would you like to be involved? The work has to finish because our funding at the moment finishes by the end of December 25. So it leaves us a while, but not a hugely long time. And we have a budget which is not infinite, but we've budgeted around 50,000 to support, to pay for people doing the research individually. I'm envisaging, tell me if I'm wrong, that will be scattered quite thinly between, so that we can involve as many people and organisations as possible, rather than, you know, putting out big sums to just a few people. So yes, how would you like to feedback? Abeline. Oh, they're running for you. Oh, got questions, lovely. I'll take questions. Or I've also, it's not a presentation. It was not a presentation. I'm going to fight about it later. What I have done is I've put some sticky, post-its on your tables. If you have any thoughts and you don't get to ask a question, or if you're shy and you'd rather put
I'm really shy.
a sticky note, I thought you might be. If you'd rather write a post-it note, please do.
So
we could photograph them. Yes. Yeah.
So you know when you say about the transit sites?
Yes.
Because in the West Midlands we've got dummy transit sites.
I know.
Yeah, so
yes.
are we doing something, he's doing something on dummy transit sites as well as usable transit sites?
I think you've just said that there should be.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's good.
What's the purpose of the research, Sarah? What are we aiming to do with it?
Very good question, and I did write something down about that, but I didn't get to that. So it's got more than one purpose. Firstly, we thought it was really important that the voices of people living on the roadside was heard, was brought to the fore, was heard by policymakers, but that it also matches with the evidence of what provision there already is. Because there's a lot of narrative in government around policymakers that people, you know, there are transit sites to put people on. But we know, well, one, that there's hardly any transit provision, that it's awful, and not everybody wants to go on a transit site. So it's matching the evidence of what there is on the ground with the stories and the aspirations of the people who are either using them or not using them for very good reasons, as something to challenge current narratives around what's said about people who are travelling, but also to set an aspiration of what people would like for travelling. Is that? Thank you.
So will you give us the questions to ask the people, or if you just want like case studies of people that have been on the site?
Good. Actually, there's really good questions, Abeline, because when I was talking to Colin, you know, as the person who was looking at helping to design it, he said, do we have to do this on paper? I said, no, I don't think so. You know, I think we can ask people, can share their stories through voice notes, through interviews, through whatever it is that they want to share to illustrate those. So it could be case studies, it could be questionnaires. This is part of the co-design process, is to make a survey process or a research process that works for you, as well as answers the questions.
Remember you said Lucy, anytime when I done anything with you, she would type it for you. And give something like that again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
All the stories that we have.
That's it.
Or use the, what do you call that? And then, so the families that we are helping, we can do, sorry, the families we are helping, we can do the, ask them without any writing being involved.
That's it. You know, I think that that's a point that's already come up, and I think you're totally right. Is you shouldn't need to be literate to be able to respond, and actually people can be a bit freer as well when they're not writing something down.
Jay again from GT Wales. We don't have any transit sites in Wales, so we're talking about unauthorised encampments. I'm just wondering if you have any thoughts yet about how to capture a range of voices without someone feeling like every time they move to a new area, someone from another organisation's running down and going, oh, can we just get your thoughts on this? Obviously, I'm not talking about any kind of surveillance or tracking, but is there a way to, I don't know, publicise it, have an opt-in, so that it's just something, because in Wales, Gypsy Travellers Wales are the first people to go to any unauthorised encampment, and we don't go with police. The local authority have given us permission to do that, but maybe we could make it part of the thing, you know, handing out information for the first 6 months, and then start canvassing in the next 6 months, you know, rather than every person, every time they stop, getting a different person coming and asking them the same questions for this project.
We can, I mean, that certainly could be a question as part of it, is have you been interviewed before for this, or have you contributed before? It's also interesting if people have already had contact with somebody else, if they want to share where they've come from and where they're going to. Not everybody might want to do that, but if they do, that would be lovely.
Adrian and I done a report on Walsall accommodations needs assessment, and that's a good report on unauthorised encampments and what they want.
Yeah.
That's a good report if you need that.
Yes. I had thought as well that there's, although it will be good to go and talk to people now, because things have changed after the Policing Act as well, where there's existing research, where there's existing reports, rather than try and reinvent the wheel, that we should be drawing on those and recognising that work that's been done as well.
And the ONS report and the fundamental rights. Siobhan and Adrian can give you them reports. I can't do email.
I thought you were offering to do the literature review there for a minute.
You know, I'll help do the reports back and right.
I know.
Can I just ask then, because it's Wynne, one of the concerns that we have is the fact that often communities, organisations and support groups are blocked from unauthorised encampments We have been, because we were really, really effective at getting stops.
Yeah.
So we are not part of any welfare needs approach, and we are not given any of that information via any of the local authorities around us, unless there is some other kind of need that's been identified by, for example, Cheshire. But in Merseyside, we don't get any inclusion at all. So how, in places like that, or where community organisations don't exist, how do you plan to kind of reach out there?
I think we're not going to be able to cover everywhere, because there's not a £2 million budget. You know, it's going to be a sample, but you're totally right. The gaps are part of the problem, in that there isn't the support there. So any suggestions of ways to gather voices from areas where there isn't a presence, you're really welcome. But I'm sure there are some ways.
I think that's why I asked the question. I
Yeah.
think that's why I asked the question,
Yeah.
really, to get us thinking about how do we cover those areas, and the communities that are in those areas who are, their voices are just not heard anywhere in the
Unsupported,
experience.
unheard.
And maybe even reporting where those gaps are is
Yes.
going to be a start for identifying
Yeah.
that need, isn't it?
Yes, yeah. I think Ivy's. And who's next?
Thank you. So yes, Nancy again from London Gypsies and Travellers. I agree that possibly just listing the limitations of the study would be a beginning for actually.
I think there will, and knowing Colin, that he will be right.
I'm just as excited. I'm looking forward to reading that report, and partly also because of its links to the Police Act and the fact that it will have to be re-examined at least partly now. And so I was wondering whether that was part of the motivation about campaigning against the Police Act, whether there's any thinking about that, and also whether the threat of criminalisation then also impacts people's ability to give their testimony to the project. So whether there will be any mention of that interconnection in the report, or is that seen as too political?
No, it's not. I mean, we can be as political with a small p as we like, because this is moving for change. So we're not going from a local authority perspective. So we can certainly ask about people's awareness of the Policing Act, because or if there's anything changed because of that could be included as an issue. Yeah.
Lack of awareness.
Well, I think that's.
Lack of awareness.
Yeah.
And can you not just cover transit sites, but most of the people on unauthorised encampments, every second trailer you go in have major medical issues.
Yeah.
So maybe you could put a little bit in that.
About?
Medical issues on unauthorised encampments. We need the transit sites to get these people medical attention. Do you understand what I'm saying? So if you highlight how bad the medical issues, disabilities, and things like that, then that'd be helpful.
So it'd be good. So if I'm hearing you right, for people who are on unauthorised encampments, it'd be part of asking, would you want to be on a transit site?
Yeah, most of them do.
Yeah.
Especially if they need help, like if they're having children or if they need operations. Usually by the time I get someone onto the transit site, because remember I've only got one usable transit site in the West Midlands and Warwickshire. By the time I've got them in the transit site, we're having to put them in Manor Hospital as an emergency, and they're having to get surgery that day. That's usually the point it's got to when we get them on the site.
Thanks, Abeline.
Just a thought, maybe controversial to most. We got opinion research companies that carried out needs assessments.
Yes.
Obviously, they're all being redone after the judgment in December.
Yeah.
Is that an opportunity for them to be asking those questions as part of their needs assessment also?
It's certainly worth a conversation
because you're
with
going to
them.
get much more participation and also gather that data through the local authority as well, so that it's going in a report.
Yeah.
I know that ARC4 personally would spend some time and invest on this because they already ask about the questions of sanctuary stopping, negotiated stopping, and that's embedded in every one of their new reports. So it's an option, an extra couple of more questions. I'm sure that they would go out their way to do that, and it wouldn't be at a cost.
Yeah.
Or maybe it might be one
Minimal.
staff member that might does one field research, and I'm sure out of all the organisations here, we could spare a staff member every now and again to go out and ask those questions if it's in a local area. Or, you know?
It's definitely worth looking into because you've got a whole army of researchers there, haven't you?
Yeah, if we got the list of questions and we just want to find, because obviously we've all
Yep.
got the same goal, so I just think it would be an idea.
Yep. No, I don't think that's controversial at all, Ivy. I think it's a good addition. That's the question. So I suppose it's then, do you want to be involved? And if you do want to be involved, how would you like to be involved? How would I know, sorry, I told you it wasn't a presentation. We've got a SurveyMonkey link that went out in the last Moving for Change newsletter, which we could resend out to everybody who's come today. And if then people want to sign up to be involved, and then say, you might have already done it. Have you done it already? Yeah. I think they are.
Yeah, there is a link on there because I just checked. It gets across to the.
So, but I can't remember if I filled everything.
I'll tell you what I'll do. I'm going to put it on Twitter and X and so forth, and also I've got the emails of everybody here. Pardon? I call it Twitter. I still call it Twitter. It's X Twitter. Or it's Twitter X. Oh, and the various different social media. God, everyone's a critic. Twitters and monkeys. Well, in that case,
we get a survey.
We'll
get you a monkey.
In that case, in your case, I suppose it would be a case of sending through as a WhatsApp or as a phone message or something like that as a link.
So what about the other people on unauthorised encampments that might not have Twitters and things?
That's the idea. Yeah. That's it. Cascade. It's cascading. Yeah.
Maybe all went on to monkeys and Twitters.
I know, it's like a zoo sometimes. There's a MailChimp and everything.
Yeah, press any key, which one then?
Okay.
What we can do is we can put it out on the various different social media and so forth, and also where the individuals here are concerned, just to make sure what the most effective way of getting a link across to them is concerned.
Yep. And if you still can't find it, just message me or whatever. It'll be fine. And so that's lovely. That's the first stage, is we'll be getting interest. What we'll do from now is, with the comments we've got today, I'll take all those and mash them in, because we're recording them, aren't we? Mm-hmm. Great. I'll go back to Colin and Nicola. I think what they'll probably want to do as a next stage is to get some ideas together and test it out with a group of you. If that sounds okay? So rather than do a one-shot, we'll try something, put it together, see what you think, and then get on to the next stage. Does that sound okay? That's it. That's my non-presentation.
Yes. Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you. Thank you all. As I say, we're finishing a little earlier than expected because of 15 minutes earlier. That's an extra. You know, you can boil 5 eggs in that time. So there's a meal over at the Howard and Castle, or Castle Howard rooms, at 7 o'clock. So see you down there. We have Christine and Hannah from Consulting Made Easy. If you want to have a chat with them over here, do you want to wave?
talked about Thank you. We talked about mentees today. We'd like to get information from you guys. So if you've got anything that you feel has been missed today, please come and talk to us. We can get it down, anything that's not been recorded, so that we can do a really good full report for everything that we've talked about today. Yeah?
And I see we also have the eye right in the sky here with us. Are you on?
I'm here. I've had a great day. I've really enjoyed watching y'all from the comfort of my own home.
Lovely, thank you. And like I say, I'll be going around asking the a question for GRTHM, and thank you so much for attending. Thank you.